When a single father opens his door at midnight to find his powerful CEO boss standing in the rain, mascara streaked and vulnerable, one moment of restraint will set off a chain of events that could destroy both their careers, or build something neither dared to dream of. This is the story of Ethan Cole and Lauren Hale, two people separated by boardrooms and paychecks, united by loneliness and a connection that refuses to stay professional. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you believe some rules are meant to be broken, hit that like button. Now, let's begin. The rain came down in sheets that Thursday night, turning the Seattle streets into rivers of reflected neon and regret. Ethan Cole stood at his apartment window, watching water cascade down the glass, blurring the city lights into watercolor streaks. Behind him, his daughter Mia slept peacefully in her small bedroom, her nightlight casting gentle shadows across walls decorated with her crayon drawings. The clock on the microwave read 11:47 p.m., and Ethan should have been asleep hours ago. Instead, he was awake, restless, his mind replaying the company party he'd left 2 hours earlier. Catalyst Digital wasn't the kind of place Ethan had ever imagined working. 6 months ago, he'd been assembling furniture at a warehouse for $12 an hour, coming home with sawdust in his hair and splinters in his hands, trying to stretch every paycheck to cover rent, groceries, and Mia's preschool. His degree in graphic design had gathered dust while he worked jobs that paid the bills, but hollowed out his soul a little more each day. Then Lauren Hale had walked into his life. She'd found him through a portfolio he'd posted online years ago, work he'd done in college, before Sarah died, before single fatherhood had consumed everything else. Lauren had called him personally, her voice crisp and professional, offering him an interview for a junior creative position. "Your work has something raw in it," she'd said. "Something real. That's rare." The interview had been terrifying. Catalyst Digital occupied 3 floors of a downtown high-rise, all glass walls and modern furniture, the kind of place where everyone looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Lauren herself had been intimidating, 42 years old, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent. Her dark hair pulled back in a style that was both elegant and severe. She was the kind of beautiful that seemed weaponized, designed to keep people at a distance. But when she'd reviewed his portfolio, something had shifted in her expression. She'd lingered on a piece he'd created the month after Sarah's death, a digital painting of a man holding a child, both their faces turned toward an uncertain horizon. "This," she'd said quietly, "this is what I'm looking for. Not polish, truth." She'd hired him on the spot. 6 months later, Ethan still felt like an imposter walking through Catalyst's glass doors each morning. His colleagues were brilliant, confident, most of them younger than his 31 years, but infinitely more sophisticated. They talked about campaigns and brands and metrics with an ease that made Ethan feel like he was constantly playing catch-up. But Lauren had been right about his work. When he created, something authentic emerged, and clients responded to it. Lauren herself remained an enigma. She was exacting, demanding, brilliant in ways that sometimes took Ethan's breath away. In meetings, she could dissect a campaign strategy with surgical precision, identifying weaknesses others missed, suggesting solutions that seemed obvious only after she'd voiced them. She ran Catalyst with an iron grip, and her employees either worshipped her or feared her, sometimes both. But Ethan had begun to notice cracks in her armor. It started small. The way her smile never quite reached her eyes during client presentations. The fact that she was always first to arrive and last to leave, her office light burning long after everyone else had gone home. The absence of personal photos on her desk, no family pictures or vacation snapshots, just awards and industry recognitions arranged with careful precision. 3 months into his employment, Ethan had stayed late to finish a project. He'd passed Lauren's office near midnight and found her still there, staring at her computer screen with an expression of such profound exhaustion that he'd almost knocked to check if she was okay. But he'd stopped himself, unsure if crossing that boundary would be welcome. They'd never been friends exactly. Lauren was his boss, and she maintained professional distance with everyone. But there had been moments, brief, fleeting, when Ethan caught glimpses of something beneath the corporate facade, a dry sense of humor that emerged during stressful deadline crunches. The way she'd quietly approved his request for flexible hours when Mia had gotten sick. Small kindnesses that felt significant coming from someone so carefully guarded. Tonight's company party had been meant to celebrate Catalyst's 10th anniversary. The event had been held at a waterfront hotel, all elegant champagne toasts and carefully networked conversations. Ethan had gone because attendance felt mandatory, even though social events made him uncomfortable. He'd spent most of the evening in corners, nursing a single beer and checking his phone for updates from Mia's babysitter. Lauren had given a speech, polished, professional, thanking the team for their dedication while revealing nothing personal. She'd looked stunning in a midnight blue dress that transformed her from corporate executive to something softer, more vulnerable. Ethan had noticed, then immediately felt guilty for noticing. He'd left around 9:30, eager to relieve the babysitter and check on Mia. The rain had started during his bus ride home, a spring storm that seemed to emerge from nowhere, violent and cleansing. Now, 2 hours later, someone was knocking on his door. Ethan glanced toward Mia's room, making sure the sound hadn't woken her, then moved quietly to the door. Through the peephole, he saw a figure in the hallway, distorted by the fisheye lens. His building didn't have a doorman, and visitors at midnight were never good news. He opened the door with the chain still attached. Lauren Hale stood in his hallway, soaked to the bone. Her carefully styled hair hung in wet strands around her face. Her makeup, usually flawless, had run in dark streaks down her cheeks. The elegant dress was plastered to her body, dripping water onto the faded hallway carpet. She was shaking, from cold or emotion, Ethan couldn't tell. "Lauren?" His voice came out as barely a whisper, shock rendering him stupid. What are you doing here?" She looked at him with eyes that seemed too bright, unfocused. "I didn't know where else to go." The words slurred slightly, and Ethan realized with a jolt that she was drunk. He'd never seen Lauren drink more than a single glass of wine at office events, had never imagined her as anything other than completely in control. "How did you get here? Did you drive?" Panic edged into his voice at the thought. "Cab?" She swayed slightly. "I took a cab. I wouldn't drive like this." Ethan unhooked the chain and pulled the door open wider, instinct overriding the alarm bells ringing in his head. "Come inside. You're going to catch pneumonia." Lauren stepped into his small apartment, and suddenly the space that had felt adequate moments ago seemed impossibly tiny. She was Lauren Hale, CEO, standing in his living room where Mia's toys were scattered across the floor, where his laundry was folded on the couch, where everything screamed of his barely held together life. "I'll get you a towel," Ethan said, moving toward the bathroom. "And some dry clothes. Just stay there." He grabbed the biggest towel he owned and one of his old college sweatshirts, plus a pair of sweatpants that would be too big for her but were better than nothing. When he returned to the living room, Lauren was standing exactly where he'd left her, dripping onto his floor, her arms wrapped around herself. "Here." He handed her the clothes. "You can change in the bathroom, first door on the left." She took the clothes without meeting his eyes and disappeared down the hallway. Ethan stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing. What was happening? Why was his boss at his apartment at midnight, drunk and clearly upset? He checked on Mia again, still sleeping soundly, thank God, then moved to the kitchen to start coffee. His hands shook as he measured grounds. This was wrong. All of this was wrong. Whatever was happening, it violated every professional boundary that should exist between them. He should call her a cab, send her home, pretend this never happened. But the image of her face, vulnerable, desperate, so unlike the woman who commanded boardrooms, kept him moving through the motions of making coffee. Lauren emerged from the bathroom 15 minutes later. His sweatshirt hung loose on her frame, the sleeves covering her hands. The sweatpants were rolled at the waist and ankles. Her hair was towel-dried but still damp, and she'd washed off her ruined makeup. Without it, she looked younger, more real, and Ethan felt something shift in his chest that he absolutely could not afford to feel. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the couch. He'd cleared his laundry to a chair. "Coffee's almost ready." She sat, pulling her knees up and wrapping her arms around them, making herself small in a way that seemed impossible for someone usually so commanding. Ethan brought her coffee in his best mug, the one Mia had decorated with stickers, and sat in the chair across from her, maintaining distance. "Do you want to tell me what happened?" he asked gently. Lauren stared into the coffee. The party went late. Everyone was drinking, celebrating. I stayed because I'm supposed to stay, supposed to be the leader, the one who mingles and makes everyone feel valued. Her voice was bitter. Somewhere around hour 3, I realized I was completely alone in a room full of people who work for me. Ethan said nothing, letting her continue. I kept drinking, more than I should have, way more, and I started thinking about... She stopped, shaking her head. It doesn't matter. I left, called a cab, gave him your address instead of mine. Why? The question came out before Ethan could stop it. Lauren finally looked at him, and the raw honesty in her expression nearly broke him. Because you're the only person I know who might understand what it's like to be lonely. The words hung between them, heavy with implications neither of them should acknowledge. You have everyone, Ethan said quietly. The whole company. Friends, probably. Family. I have employees, Lauren interrupted. I have people who depend on me for their paychecks, and people who fear me because I make hard decisions. I have a mother who calls twice a year and a father who died disappointed. I never gave him grandchildren. I have an empty house and a calendar full of meetings. She set the coffee down with shaking hands. I don't have anyone, Ethan. Not really. Ethan thought about Sarah, about the years they'd had together before cancer had stolen her away. He thought about Mia, sleeping in the next room, the center of his entire world. Lauren was right. He did understand loneliness, but it was a different kind. His was born from loss. Hers seemed to come from never having had connection in the first place. I noticed you at the office, Lauren continued, her words tumbling out now, barriers dissolved by alcohol and desperation. Not just your work, though your work is brilliant. You. The way you talk about your daughter. The way you stay late but never complain. The way you look at the world like it still has beauty in it despite everything you've been through. Lauren, Ethan started, alarm rising. I know this is inappropriate, she said quickly. I know I'm your boss and I'm drunk and I shouldn't be here. But for once in my life, I wanted to be honest about what I feel instead of calculating the professional cost. She stood up, unsteady, and moved toward him. Tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me you felt it too. Ethan stood as well, his heart hammering. You need to sit back down. You need to sober up. And do you feel it? She was close now, so close he could smell the wine on her breath mixed with the coffee, could see the desperation in her eyes. He did feel it. That was the terrible truth. For months, he'd been aware of Lauren in ways that went beyond professional respect. The way his pulse quickened when she praised his work. The way he found himself looking for her in the office, tracking her movements without meaning to. The dangerous warmth that spread through his chest during their rare one-on-one meetings. But feeling it and acting on it were entirely different things. It doesn't matter what I feel, Ethan said, his voice rough. You're my boss. You're drunk. This can't happen. Why not? Lauren's hand came up to his chest, and Ethan stopped breathing. Why can't two lonely people find something good together? Because his mind raced for reasons that felt solid enough to voice. Because Mia is sleeping in the next room. Because tomorrow you're going to wake up and regret this. Because I can't risk my job, my stability, everything I've built for her. He gently caught her wrist, stopping her hand from moving higher. Because you deserve better than a decision made while you're not yourself. Something in Lauren's expression crumbled. Tears welled up in her eyes and she pulled her hand back as if burned. I'm sorry, she whispered. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I should go. She turned toward the door, but Ethan caught her arm. You're not going anywhere like this. You're upset and drunk and it's pouring rain. He guided her back to the couch. You're going to sleep on my couch tonight. In the morning when you're sober, we'll figure this out. Ethan, no arguments, Lauren. Please. She sank back onto the couch, and Ethan grabbed a blanket from the closet, along with a pillow. He set them beside her, then stepped back, maintaining that crucial distance. I'm sorry, Lauren said again, her voice small. I've ruined everything, haven't I? Nothing's ruined, Ethan lied, because he didn't know what else to say. Get some sleep. We'll talk in the morning. He retreated to his bedroom, closing the door behind him, but not locking it, just in case. His heart was still racing, his hand still shaking with the adrenaline of what had almost happened, what he'd stopped from happening. Sleep felt impossible, but eventually exhaustion claimed him. When he woke at 6, his internal alarm trained by years of single parenthood, the living room was empty. The blanket was folded neatly on the couch, the pillow placed precisely on top. Lauren's wet dress and shoes were gone. The only evidence she'd been there at all was the mug with Mia's stickers, rinsed and placed in the dish drainer. Ethan stood in his quiet apartment, his daughter still sleeping, and tried to process what had happened. His boss had shown up drunk and vulnerable at his door. She'd admitted feelings that mirrored his own dangerous ones. He'd stopped something from happening that could have destroyed both their lives. And now he had no idea what came next. Mia emerged from her room 20 minutes later, her curly hair wild with sleep, clutching her stuffed elephant. "Daddy, I heard voices last night. Did someone visit?" Ethan scooped her up, breathing in the innocent scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Just someone who needed help, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about." But as he made Mia breakfast and got her ready for daycare, Ethan knew everything had changed. The careful professional distance he'd maintained with Lauren was shattered. They'd both revealed too much, admitted too much. Going back to normal seemed impossible. Walking into the office Monday morning felt like marching toward his execution. Ethan had spent the entire weekend oscillating between anxiety and dread, playing out scenarios in his mind. Would Lauren fire him to eliminate the awkwardness, pretend it never happened, pull him into her office for a mortifying conversation about boundaries? The answer, it turned out, was worse than any scenario he'd imagined. Lauren acted like nothing had happened at all. She was already at her desk when Ethan arrived, impeccably dressed as always, her armor fully restored. When he passed her office, she glanced up and gave him the same professional nod she gave everyone else, then returned to her computer. No acknowledgement, no conversation, nothing. The week proceeded in surreal normalcy. Lauren ran meetings with her usual precision. She critiqued Ethan's work with the same exacting standards. When they interacted, it was purely professional, her tone neither warmer nor colder than before. It was as if that rainy Thursday night had been erased from existence, except it hadn't been, and Ethan couldn't forget. Every interaction felt loaded with subtext. When Lauren praised a campaign he'd designed, he searched her expression for hidden meaning. When she worked late and he saw her office light burning, he remembered her confession of loneliness. When she smiled at clients with that practiced corporate warmth, he thought about how vulnerable she'd looked in his sweatshirt, tears on her face. It was driving him insane. 2 weeks after that night, Ethan made a decision. He couldn't keep working like this, caught between professionalism and the memory of her hand on his chest, her desperate question, "Do you feel it?" The healthy thing, the safe thing for both of them, and especially for Mia, was to leave Catalyst Digital. He started updating his resume that night, after Mia went to bed. His 6 months at Catalyst looked good on paper, and he had new pieces for his portfolio that showcased growth. He could find another job, maybe not as creatively fulfilling, but one that didn't come with this emotional minefield. The thought of leaving hurt more than he wanted to admit. He'd been happy at Catalyst, or as happy as he could be while carrying the weight of single parenthood. The work challenged him, and despite everything, Lauren had been an incredible mentor. Under her guidance, he'd grown more as a designer than he had in years. But none of that mattered if staying meant living in this limbo, this terrible space between what was professional and what was personal, what was safe and what was dangerous. 3 weeks after that Thursday night, Ethan drafted his resignation letter. He was refining the wording when his phone rang. Mia's daycare. His heart immediately kicked into overdrive. They only called during work hours if something was wrong. "Mr. Cole? This is Jennifer from Sunshine Academy. Mia's fine," the director said quickly, "but she's running a fever. You'll need to come pick her up." Ethan was already grabbing his jacket. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. He stopped by Lauren's office on his way out, knocking on the open door. She looked up from her computer, and for just a second, something flickered in her expression before the professional mask slammed back into place. "Mia's sick," Ethan said. "I need to leave early." "Of course," Lauren's voice was perfectly neutral. "Take whatever time you need. Family comes first." Ethan nodded and turned to go, but Lauren's voice stopped him. "Ethan?" He turned back. Lauren was standing now, her hands clasped in front of her, and for the first time since that night, she looked uncertain. She stopped, seemed to reconsider, then continued. I hope she feels better soon. Thanks, Ethan said, and left before he could read anything into those simple words. Mia's fever turned out to be a mild virus, nothing serious, but it meant 3 days of staying home with her. Ethan worked from his laptop during her naps, trying to keep up with deadlines while monitoring her temperature and making endless cups of chamomile tea. On the third day, while Mia was napping, Ethan's laptop pinged with a video call request from Lauren. He stared at the notification, his finger hovering over the decline button. They'd never video called before. All their remote communications were through email or the company chat system. This felt deliberate, personal. He accepted the call. Lauren's face filled his screen, and Ethan was startled to see she wasn't in her office. She appeared to be in a home office, with neutral walls and minimal decoration visible behind her. She wasn't in her usual corporate armor either, just a simple gray sweater, her hair down around her shoulders. Hi, she said, and the word came out uncertain, so unlike her usual confidence. Hi, Ethan echoed. An awkward silence stretched between them. Lauren looked away from the camera, then back, and Ethan saw her take a visible breath. We need to talk about what happened, she said finally. I've been avoiding it, pretending it didn't exist, and that was cowardly. Ethan's heart was pounding, but he kept his voice level. Okay. I need to apologize, Lauren continued, not just for showing up at your apartment drunk, though that was inexcusable, but for putting you in an impossible position. You're my employee. The power dynamic alone makes what I did inappropriate, and then adding my state of mind, the things I said. She closed her eyes briefly. I'm so sorry, Ethan. You were kind to me that night when you had every right to slam the door in my face. You needed help, Ethan said quietly. I needed a therapist, Lauren corrected, a bitter smile touching her lips. Not my employee's couch, and his coffee, and his patience. She leaned forward slightly. I want you to know that nothing like that will ever happen again. I've been sober since that night. Not that I had a drinking problem before, but clearly I have terrible judgment when alcohol is involved, and I'm recommitting to appropriate professional boundaries. Ethan should have felt relieved. This was exactly what needed to happen. A clear conversation, mutual agreement to move forward professionally, crisis averted. Instead, he felt a crushing disappointment that he had no right to feel. I appreciate that, he managed to say. Lauren studied his face through the screen. There's something else I need to say, even though it complicates things. She paused, gathering courage. What I said that night about noticing you, about loneliness, that was true. The alcohol didn't create those feelings, it just demolished my filters. So I need you to know that if you feel uncomfortable working at Catalyst now, I will give you the most glowing recommendation letter you've ever seen. I will personally help you find a position elsewhere. I won't let my mistake damage your career. You want me to leave? The words came out sharper than Ethan intended. No. Lauren's response was immediate, emphatic. But I want you to have the choice without worrying about burning bridges or losing professional references. You deserve that security. Ethan thought about the resignation letter saved on his laptop, about the job listings he'd bookmarked. Leaving had felt like the only option, but hearing Lauren offer it so readily made him realize he didn't actually want to go. I don't want to leave, he heard himself say. Something shifted in Lauren's expression, relief maybe, or something more complicated. You're sure? I'm sure. And he was. But I need to know that we can actually move forward, that every interaction isn't going to feel like we're both pretending something didn't happen. We acknowledge it happened, Lauren said carefully. We acknowledge it was inappropriate and can't happen again, and then we move forward as colleagues who respect each other professionally. She tilted her head slightly. Does that work? It should have worked. It was the mature professional solution. But Ethan found himself asking the question that had haunted him for 3 weeks. And what you said about feeling something, was that just the alcohol? Lauren was quiet for a long moment. No, she finally admitted. But that doesn't matter, Ethan. We both know all the reasons why it can't matter. Mia, Ethan said. Your daughter, Lauren agreed. Your stability, the power dynamic, company policy, the risk to both our careers, the gossip that would destroy us both. She met his eyes through the screen. All of that outweighs whatever this is. Right, Ethan said, even as his heart argued otherwise. Right, Lauren echoed, but neither of them ended the call. They sat in that strange digital space, connected by screens and miles of cable, both knowing they should disconnect, but neither willing to be the first to do it. Finally, Ethan heard Mia stirring in her room. I should go. She's waking up. How is she? Lauren asked, and the genuine concern in her voice made Ethan's chest ache. Better. The fever broke this morning. Good. Lauren smiled, and it was real, reaching her eyes in a way her corporate smiles never did. You're a good father, Ethan. Thank you. He paused. And Lauren? Thank you for being honest. About all of it. Thank you for not hating me. I could never hate you, Ethan said, and realized too late how much that confession revealed. Lauren's expression softened into something dangerous, something neither of them could afford. I should let you go, she said quickly. See you Monday? See you Monday. The call ended, and Ethan sat staring at his blank screen, Mia's voice calling Daddy from her room. He'd just agreed to stay at Catalyst, to work alongside Lauren while pretending they didn't feel what they both clearly felt. It was possibly the stupidest decision he'd ever made. But as he went to check on his daughter, seeing her curled up with her elephant, her fever finally gone, Ethan knew he'd made the only choice he could live with. He'd spent 3 years since Sarah's death focused entirely on survival, on being the parent Mia needed. Maybe it was time to consider that he was allowed to want something for himself, even if he couldn't have it. Monday morning, Ethan walked into Catalyst with his resignation letter deleted and his resolve firmly in place. Professional boundaries, respectful distance, focus on the work. Lauren was in her office, and when their eyes met through the glass, she gave him a small nod of acknowledgement. Not the corporate nod from before, something more personal, more real. It wasn't much, but it was enough to build on. What neither of them noticed was Rachel Moore watching from her office down the hall, her sharp eyes missing nothing, her mind already calculating what she'd observed. Rachel had been at Catalyst for 8 years, had been passed over for senior positions 3 times, and had learned to watch for leverage wherever it might appear. And Ethan Cole's early departure, followed by Lauren Hale working from home for 3 days, followed by the way they looked at each other now. That was very interesting leverage indeed. Rachel Moore had built her career on observation. 8 years at Catalyst Digital had taught her that success wasn't just about talent. It was about knowing things, seeing patterns others missed, and understanding that information was currency. She'd watched Lauren Hale climb to the top with a combination of brilliance and ruthlessness that Rachel both admired and resented. She'd watched colleagues rise and fall based on who they knew and what they knew about them. And now she was watching something develop between Lauren and the new creative hire that could prove very useful indeed. The signs were subtle at first. The way Lauren's voice softened infinitesimally when she spoke to Ethan in meetings. The frequency with which she stopped by his desk, always with legitimate work reasons, but still. The fact that Ethan Cole, a struggling single father hired just 6 months ago, had somehow become indispensable to their highest profile campaigns. Rachel wasn't jealous exactly. She was strategic, and strategy required patience. 2 months after that rainy Thursday night that Rachel knew nothing concrete about, but suspected everything, the dynamics at Catalyst began to shift in ways that gave her more to work with. It started with the late nights. Catalyst had landed a major account, a tech startup going public that needed a complete brand overhaul in 8 weeks. Lauren assembled a core team, Rachel as project manager, Ethan as lead creative, and 3 other designers. The timeline was brutal, the client demanding, and the pressure intense enough that the office became their second home. Rachel noticed how Lauren and Ethan moved around each other during those long evenings. There was a careful choreography to it, a studied casualness that felt anything but casual. They maintained physical distance even in crowded team meetings. They never ate dinner together when the team ordered in. When Ethan had to leave by 6 to pick up his daughter, Lauren never commented, but Rachel saw how her eyes followed him to the elevator. The restraint was admirable, really, also completely damning. Working late again? Rachel asked one Thursday evening, appearing in Ethan's cubicle around 8 p.m. The rest of the team had gone home, but she'd seen Lauren's office light still burning and had correctly guessed Ethan would still be there too. Ethan looked up from his screen, surprised. Yeah, trying to get these mock-ups finished before tomorrow's client call. Lauren's a demanding boss, Rachel observed, perching on the edge of his desk. But fair, she seems to recognize talent when she sees it. I've been lucky to work with her, Ethan said, his tone carefully neutral. Lucky, Rachel repeated, as if testing the word. That's one way to put it. She smiled. You know, when I heard she'd hired someone with your background, warehouse work, single parent, no recent agency experience, I thought it was a diversity play. Optics. But your work is genuinely good. Thanks, Ethan said, though Rachel could see the compliment landed exactly as she'd intended, with an uncomfortable awareness of how he might be perceived. How is your daughter? Mia, right? Ethan's expression shifted, warming in the way it always did when someone mentioned his child. She's good, growing too fast. It must be hard balancing this job with single parenthood. The hours Lauren expects... I manage, Ethan interrupted, a slight edge entering his voice. And Lauren's been accommodating when I need flexibility. Of course she has, Rachel said smoothly. Like I said, she's fair. She stood, brushing invisible lint from her skirt. Well, don't stay too late. Even Lauren has to sleep sometime. She left him with that, pleased with the seed planted. The implication that others noticed Lauren's special treatment, the reminder of the optics, the suggestion that people talked. What Rachel didn't see was Lauren standing in her office doorway 20 feet away, having emerged just in time to hear the entire exchange. Lauren said nothing, just returned to her office, but her jaw was tight, with an anger that had nowhere to go. The following week, Lauren called Ethan into her office. It was late afternoon, the autumn sun slanting through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting everything in amber light. Ethan had been in Lauren's office countless times since that night, but the space still intimidated him, all glass and steel and carefully curated minimalism that reflected its occupant perfectly. Close the door, Lauren said, and Ethan's pulse quickened despite himself. They rarely closed the door. Glass walls meant visibility, but closed doors meant privacy, and privacy felt dangerous. He closed it anyway and sat in one of the chairs across from her desk. Lauren stood at the window, her back to him, her posture rigid. We have a problem, she said without preamble. What kind of problem? The kind where people are starting to notice. She turned to face him. Rachel Moore approached me this morning with concerns about team morale. Apparently, some people feel you're getting preferential treatment. Ethan felt his stomach drop. Are they right? Objectively? No, your work justifies every assignment you've received. But perception matters, Ethan, and if people perceive favoritism, then it doesn't matter what's actually true, Ethan finished. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration building. So what do we do? Lauren moved to her desk, leaning against it, still maintaining careful distance. We become more careful. I assign you to Rachel's direct supervision for the next few projects. I stop by your desk less frequently. We interact only in group settings whenever possible. So we go backwards, Ethan said quietly. Pretend even harder that there's nothing here. There can't be anything here, Lauren said, but her voice lacked conviction. We agreed. I know what we agreed. Ethan stood, unable to sit still any longer. But it's getting harder, Lauren. Seeing you every day, working alongside you, watching you carry everything alone? Don't. The word came out sharp, almost desperate. Please don't make this harder than it already is. They stood on opposite sides of her desk, the expensive wood a barrier between them, and Ethan saw his own struggle reflected in her face. The careful distance they maintained was crumbling, not from any single breach but from 1,000 small erosions. Every shared look across a conference table, every brief moment when their hands accidentally touched while reaching for the same document, every late night when they were the last two in the office and the silence felt heavy with everything they weren't saying. I think about that night, Lauren said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. The things I said, the line I almost crossed. I tell myself it was the alcohol, that I wasn't in my right mind. But that's not entirely true, is it? No, Ethan admitted. It's not. I notice everything about you, Lauren continued, the words spilling out like a confession. What you wear, how you take your coffee, the way your whole face changes when you talk about Mia, the fact that you stay late even though I know you'd rather be home with her, the way you see beauty in things, in design, in words, in the world, despite everything you've lost. Ethan's breath caught. Lauren, I know all the reasons why this is impossible, she said. I've listed them to myself every single day since that night. But knowing something is impossible doesn't make you stop wanting it. The confession hung between them, dangerous and electric. Ethan could cross the room in 3 steps. He could kiss her right now, consequences be damned, and from the look in her eyes, she wouldn't stop him. Instead, he forced himself to take a step backwards, toward the door. Mia needs stability, he said, his voice rough. She's already lost her mother. I can't risk the life I've built for her, can't risk this job because of what I want. I know, Lauren said, and you've worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let something like this damage what you've built. I know that too. So we do what you said, we're more careful, we maintain distance. Ethan reached for the door handle. Even if it kills us. Lauren straightened, pulling her professional mask back into place with visible effort. Rachel's project starts Monday. I'll send you the assignment details. Ethan nodded and left, closing the door behind him. Through the glass wall, he saw Lauren sink into her chair, her head in her hands for just a moment before she straightened again, became the CEO again, the armor locked back in place. In her own office, Rachel Moore watched Ethan emerge from Lauren's office with the closed door, saw the tension in his shoulders, the way he didn't look back. She pulled up a blank document and began taking notes. Not accusations, not yet. Just observations. A timeline. Patterns. Insurance, she thought, for when the time was right. Working under Rachel's supervision proved more challenging than Ethan had anticipated. Where Lauren was demanding but fair, trusting her team's expertise while pushing them to exceed it, Rachel micromanaged with a precision that felt personal. Every design choice required justification. Every creative decision was questioned. Progress meetings happened twice daily, eating into actual work time. She's testing you, whispered Marcus, one of the other designers on the team, during a rare break. She does this with anyone she perceives as competition. I'm not competing with her, Ethan said, confused. Marcus gave him a look that suggested Ethan was being deliberately naive. You got hired by Lauren personally. You're on high-profile projects after 6 months when most of us spent years in the trenches. And you have her attention in a way that... He stopped himself. Just watch your back, man. Rachel doesn't forget people who outshine her. The warning proved prescient. A week into the project, Rachel called a team meeting to review Ethan's latest mock-ups. Instead of the usual conference room, she'd booked the largest one, the glass-walled space visible from most of the floor, including from Lauren's office. Walk us through your thinking, Rachel said once everyone was settled, her tone pleasant enough that Ethan didn't immediately sense the trap. He presented his designs, a bold, emotional campaign that leveraged storytelling over traditional product focus. It was risky, creative, exactly the kind of work that had impressed clients before. Rachel listened without expression, then turned to the rest of the team. Thoughts? The responses were mixed. Some loved it. Others had valid concerns about whether the client would embrace such a departure from tech industry norms. Interesting perspectives, Rachel said. Ethan, this is beautiful work, truly, but I'm not sure you understand our clients' needs. Tech startups going public need to project stability, not emotion. Investors want data, not stories. Stories sell, Ethan countered, and this client's product is about human connection. That's emotional by nature. Is it? Rachel pulled up a different presentation on the screen, one of Ethan's earlier projects, a more traditional approach. This is what you did for Catalyst's own rebrand last year. Clean, professional, data-focused. Why the dramatic shift in approach? Ethan felt the trap closing, but couldn't see the way out. Every client is different. Every campaign requires fresh thinking. Or, Rachel said carefully, you're trying to prove something, push boundaries, make a name for yourself. She smiled. There's nothing wrong with ambition, Ethan, but not at the client's expense. Around the table, Ethan could see people forming opinions, dividing into camps. Some saw through Rachel's manipulation. Others were nodding along, convinced by her framing. Through the glass wall, Ethan caught a glimpse of Lauren at her office window. She was watching the meeting, her expression unreadable. "I'll revise the approach," Ethan said, keeping his voice level. "Incorporate the team's feedback." "Good," Rachel said. "That's all we're asking. Collaboration over ego." The meeting ended, and as people filed out, Marcus gave Ethan a sympathetic shoulder squeeze. "That was brutal, man." "It was strategic," Ethan corrected. "She just made me look like a loose cannon in front of the whole team." "In front of Lauren, too," Marcus noted. "That room wasn't chosen by accident." Ethan spent the next 3 days revising the campaign, incorporating a more conservative approach while trying to maintain some creative spark. The work felt compromised, safe in a way that made his designer's soul hurt, but he swallowed his pride and presented it at the next review. Rachel approved it without comment, which somehow felt worse than criticism. That Friday evening, as Ethan was packing up to pick up Mia from after-school care, his phone pinged with a message from Lauren. "My office, 5 minutes." His heart rate kicked up as he made his way to her door. Through the glass, he could see her on a phone call, her expression animated as she gestured while talking. She saw him and gestured him inside. "I understand your concerns," she was saying to whoever was on the other end, "but we've delivered exceptional results on every project. One campaign's creative direction is hardly grounds to—" She listened, her jaw tightening. "I see. Well, if that's your position, we'll discuss it at Monday's meeting." She ended the call and set her phone down with more force than necessary. "Problem?" Ethan asked. "Sit," Lauren said, and he did. She remained standing, pacing behind her desk like a caged animal. "That was our tech startup client. Apparently they heard through back channels that there's been internal disagreement about the creative direction. They're concerned about whether we're the right team for their IPO campaign." Ethan's stomach sank. "Rachel." "Rachel," Lauren confirmed. "Though I can't prove it, she's too smart to leave fingerprints." She stopped pacing and looked at Ethan. "I saw the revised mock-ups you sent over. They're good, safe, competent. But not great," Ethan finished. "Not your best work," Lauren agreed. "What happened?" Ethan thought about the glass-walled meeting, the careful dismantling of his credibility, the way Rachel had made innovation look like ego. "Rachel's protecting her territory. I threatened it without meaning to, and she's pushing back." Lauren's expression hardened. "By undermining your work and potentially losing us a client." She moved to the window, staring out at the darkening city. "I could overrule her, take you off her supervision, reassign the project." "Which would prove every suspicion about favoritism," Ethan said, "and make everything worse." "So I do nothing while she sabotages you?" "You do what any CEO would do," Ethan said, standing. "You focus on the client, the company, the bigger picture, not on protecting one designer's feelings." Lauren turned to face him, and the frustration in her expression was naked, unguarded. "Is that what you think this is about? Your feelings?" "Isn't it?" Ethan challenged. "If I were anyone else, any other employee, would you be this upset?" The question hung between them, unanswerable, because they both knew the truth. "I should go," Ethan said quietly. "Mia's waiting." "Ethan?" Lauren's voice stopped him at the door. "Your first instinct on that campaign, the emotional approach, was right. It was brilliant. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." He met her eyes, saw belief there that had nothing to do with professional assessment and everything to do with seeing him clearly. "Thank you." "For what it's worth," Lauren added, "I'm pulling the project from Rachel, not because of you, because she contacted the client behind my back, which crosses a line no matter who's involved." Ethan nodded and left, his mind churning. The situation was spiraling beyond their control, personal and professional threads tangling in ways that would eventually strangle them both if they weren't careful. Lauren was true to her word. By Monday morning, the tech startup account had been reassigned to a different project manager, and Rachel had been given a formal warning about communication protocols. Rachel's expression when the news went out was placid, unbothered, but Ethan saw the calculation in her eyes. She'd lost this battle but gained valuable information. Lauren Hale would break her own rules to protect Ethan Cole. The next few weeks settled into an uneasy rhythm. Ethan delivered exceptional work on the revised campaign, which won the client's approval and calmed corporate nerves. Rachel maintained professional courtesy, but the warmth, fake though it had been, was gone, replaced by cool efficiency. And Lauren pulled back even further, their interactions so formal that Ethan sometimes wondered if he'd imagined their late-night conversations, the moments of connection. Then came the charity gala. Catalyst Digital had a table at the annual Seattle Tech Alliance fundraiser, one of those black tie events where the city's business elite gathered to network and donate to causes that looked good on corporate reports. Attendance was expected for senior staff, which meant Lauren and Rachel would both be there. Optional for everyone else, which meant Ethan planned to skip it. "You should go," Marcus told him over lunch 2 days before the event. "FaceTime with clients, other companies. It's good for your career." "I don't own a tuxedo," Ethan said, "and I'd have to find a babysitter for Mia on a Saturday night." "Rent a tux. The company will reimburse it, and there's probably a dozen people at Catalyst who'd babysit for you." Marcus leaned forward. "Listen, man. You're talented, but talent only gets you so far in this industry. Connections matter. Being seen matters." Ethan knew Marcus was right. He also knew that watching Lauren in an elegant gown, playing the role of successful CEO while he stood on the sidelines in a rented tux, would be its own special torture. He went anyway. The babysitter arrived at 6, a responsible college student who lived in his building and occasionally watched Mia. Ethan had read her 3 stories, ensured her nightlight was working, and left a list of emergency contacts even though he'd only be gone a few hours. "She'll be fine," the babysitter assured him, with the confidence of someone who'd never lost a spouse and understood that fine was never guaranteed. "You look nice, by the way." The tuxedo did fit well, Ethan had to admit. The rental place had been surprisingly competent, and when he looked in the mirror, he saw someone who could almost pass as belonging at an event like this. Almost. The gala was held at the Four Seasons, the ballroom glittering with crystal chandeliers and elegantly dressed people who moved through the space like they owned it. Ethan found the Catalyst table and recognized a few colleagues already nursing drinks and making small talk. No sign of Lauren yet, which provided temporary relief. "Ethan," Marcus appeared with 2 champagne flutes, handing one over. "See? Not so terrible." It actually wasn't terrible at first. The food was excellent, the conversation pleasant enough. Ethan chatted with a designer from another agency about industry trends and exchanged business cards with a potential client. This was networking, he realized. This was what Marcus meant about being seen. Then Lauren arrived. She wore midnight blue, a gown that somehow managed to be both elegant and devastating. Her dark hair swept up to reveal the graceful line of her neck. She moved through the room with practiced ease, stopping at tables to greet people, her professional smile firmly in place. But Ethan, who'd spent months learning to read her subtle signals, could see the tension in her shoulders, the slightly too bright quality of her eyes. She was as uncomfortable as he was, just better at hiding it. Rachel was with her, resplendent in crimson, attached to Lauren's side like a remora to a shark. Wherever Lauren went, Rachel followed, contributing to conversations, laughing at appropriate moments, playing the role of trusted second-in-command. "They always do this at events," Marcus murmured. Rachel positions herself as Lauren's right hand. Good strategy, if you think about it. Ethan thought it looked exhausting for Lauren, never getting a moment alone, always performing with Rachel there to witness and judge. The evening proceeded through dinner and speeches. A tech CEO talked about innovation and responsibility. A nonprofit director shared stories about students their organization had helped. Lauren herself gave brief remarks about Catalyst's commitment to ethical business practices, and Ethan watched her command the room with effortless authority, never stumbling, never showing weakness. After the speeches, music started and people began mingling again, the formal portion giving way to networking with cocktails. Ethan found himself near the bar when a voice behind him said, "Not a fan of these events?" He turned to find Lauren there, alone for the first time all evening. Rachel was across the room talking to a group of executives. "They're fine," Ethan said carefully, aware they were in public, that people could be watching. "Good opportunity to make connections." "Very diplomatic," Lauren said, a hint of amusement in her voice. She ordered a sparkling water from the bartender, and Ethan noticed she wasn't drinking alcohol. Hadn't been, probably, since that Thursday night months ago. They stood side by side at the bar, not looking at each other, just two colleagues taking a break from the crowd. "You look nice," Lauren said quietly. "The tux suits you." "You look—" Ethan stopped himself, searching for professional words that wouldn't reveal too much. "Very elegant." "Careful," Lauren murmured. "Someone might think you're being too familiar with your boss." There was no heat in the words, just exhausted irony. Ethan glanced at her and saw the strain she was hiding from everyone else. "Are you okay?" "I'm always okay," Lauren said automatically. Then she sighed. "I'm tired, Ethan. Tired of performing, tired of being watched, tired of—" She stopped. "Never mind. This isn't the time or place." "Lauren, there you are?" Rachel's voice cut through the moment like a blade. She appeared at Lauren's other side, smiling brightly. "The Henderson group wants to discuss the Johnson account. They're at table 12. "Of course," Lauren said, her professional mask sliding back into place seamlessly. She glanced at Ethan. "Enjoy the rest of your evening." She left with Rachel, and Ethan watched them go, noticing how Rachel's hand rested possessively on Lauren's arm, guiding her through the crowd. Claiming territory. Ethan was talking with Marcus an hour later when he heard raised voices from near the coat check. Not quite an argument, but close. He looked over and saw Lauren standing rigid, facing a man in his 60s who radiated aggressive confidence. Ethan didn't recognize him, but from Lauren's body language, this wasn't a pleasant conversation. "Who's that?" he asked Marcus. "Richard Pemberton. He's on Catalyst's board, also a legendary asshole." Marcus frowned. "This looks bad." It did look bad. Pemberton was standing too close, invading Lauren's space in a way that made Ethan's protective instincts flare. Lauren was holding her ground, her voice too low to hear but her posture defensive. Then Pemberton's voice rose enough to carry, "You need to be careful about appearances, Lauren. A woman in your position can't afford scandals." Rachel had materialized nearby, close enough to hear, her expression neutral but her eyes sharp. Lauren said something in response, still quiet, and Pemberton laughed. An ugly sound. "Just friendly advice. You've built something impressive. Would be a shame to see it destroyed over poor judgment." Ethan started moving toward them without conscious decision, Marcus grabbing his arm. "Don't. Whatever this is, you getting involved makes it worse." Marcus was right, but Ethan still had to force himself to stay put as Lauren excused herself from Pemberton with icy politeness and walked toward the exit. She moved fast, her heels clicking on marble, her shoulders locked with suppressed emotion. Ethan waited 30 seconds, then followed. He found her in a quiet hallway outside the ballroom, standing at a window that overlooked the city lights. Her arms were wrapped around herself, and her breathing was too controlled, the kind of measured inhales that came from fighting tears. "Lauren." She turned, and Ethan saw her eyes were bright with unshed tears, her composure cracking. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you. What did Pemberton say?" "Nothing I haven't heard before," Lauren said bitterly. "Just reminders about my place, my image, the importance of avoiding controversy." She laughed without humor. "He heard something. I don't know what exactly, but he heard enough to issue warnings. About us." "There is no us," Lauren said, but the words lacked conviction. "There can't be." Ethan stepped closer. "I'm getting tired of hearing what can't be." "Then what do you suggest?" Lauren challenged, emotion breaking through her control. "Should I risk everything I've built? Should you risk your daughter's stability? Should we give people like Rachel and Pemberton exactly what they're waiting for?" "I don't have answers," Ethan admitted, "but I know that pretending this doesn't exist isn't working either. We're just—" He searched for the right words. "We're eroding, piece by piece." Lauren turned back to the window. "When I started Catalyst, I made a promise to myself. No personal life that could compromise professional judgment. No relationships that could create conflicts of interest. No vulnerability that could be weaponized." Her voice dropped. "I've kept that promise for 10 years. Built something real. And now you're lonely," Ethan finished. "You said so yourself that night. Being lonely is safer than being destroyed." "Is it?" Ethan moved to stand beside her at the window. Because from where I'm standing, you're already being destroyed. Just slowly, by isolation instead of scandal. They stood in silence, the city sparkling below them, the gala continuing without them just down the hall. Ethan could hear music, laughter, the sounds of people who weren't trapped in impossible situations. I think about you constantly, Lauren said suddenly. What you're doing, whether Mia is okay, if you're staying late, or if you made it home for dinner. I catch myself looking for you in the office. I keep conversations going longer than necessary just to hear your voice. And I know it's inappropriate, I know it's dangerous, but I can't seem to stop. Ethan's breath caught. I know, I do the same thing. We should stop, Lauren whispered. Right now, tonight. We should agree that this ends here. Do you want it to end? Lauren closed her eyes. No. The admission hung between them, devastating in its honesty. Ethan reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. It was the first time they'd touched deliberately, intentionally, since that Thursday night months ago. Her fingers were cold, trembling slightly. I don't have solutions, Ethan said, but I think we stop pretending this isn't real. We acknowledge it, figure out what it means together instead of trying to fight it separately. That's terrifying, Lauren said. I know. She looked at their joined hands, then up at his face. If we do this, if we even explore this, everything gets harder. The scrutiny, the judgment, the risk to your job and my reputation and Mia's stability. I know, Ethan said again. But I'm starting to think the alternative is worse. We'd have to be careful, so careful. We're already careful. Lauren laughed, the sound shaky but genuine. This is insane. I'm the CEO. I'm supposed to be rational, to make good decisions, to... Ethan squeezed her hand gently. Maybe good decisions don't always look rational from the outside. Before Lauren could respond, footsteps echoed in the hallway. They dropped hands instantly, stepping apart as a couple emerged from the ballroom, laughing and oblivious. The moment shattered, and reality crashed back in. I should get back, Lauren said. People will notice. Right. But neither of them moved. They stood there, separate but connected by everything unspoken, until finally Lauren took a breath and straightened her shoulders, rebuilding her armor. Monday, she said. We'll talk Monday. Somewhere private. Actually talk about this instead of dancing around it. Monday, Ethan agreed. Lauren walked back to the ballroom first, and Ethan waited 5 minutes before following. When he re-entered the gala, he saw her immediately, back at the catalyst table, smiling at something Marcus was saying, perfectly composed. But when her eyes met his across the room, something passed between them that felt like a promise, or maybe a threat. Either way, everything had changed. Rachel Moore, watching from her position by the bar, had seen them both disappear and return separately. She hadn't seen what happened in that hallway, but she didn't need to. The careful timing, the changed expressions, the way they deliberately didn't look at each other now, it told her everything she needed to know. She pulled out her phone and opened a private note, adding another entry to her growing documentation. The timeline was getting clearer. The pattern was emerging. And Rachel Moore had learned long ago that patience always paid off. She just had to wait for the right moment to use what she knew. Monday arrived with the weight of unfinished conversations and promises neither of them was sure they could keep. Ethan dropped Mia at daycare, listened to her chatter about the volcano project she was building with blocks, kissed her forehead, and tried not to think about how one conversation could potentially upend the stability he'd spent 3 years building for her. The morning stretched endlessly. Every email from Lauren felt loaded with subtext. Every glimpse of her through the glass walls of her office made his pulse quicken. They'd agreed to talk, but logistics became their enemy. Back-to-back meetings filled Lauren's calendar, and Ethan had deadline pressure on 3 different campaigns. It wasn't until nearly 7 that evening that Lauren finally sent him a message. Are you still here? Ethan looked up from his screen to see her office lights still burning, her silhouette visible through the glass. Most of the floor had emptied hours ago. He typed back, Yes? Conference room C, 10 minutes. Conference room C was on the building's 7th floor, tucked away from Catalyst's main offices, used primarily for client presentations. Neutral territory. Private. Ethan's hands were shaking slightly as he saved his work and headed for the elevator. Lauren was already there when he arrived, standing at the window with her arms crossed, her reflection ghostly in the darkened glass. The city sprawled below them, a million lights representing a million lives, all simpler than theirs felt in this moment. "Close the door," she said without turning. Ethan did, and the soft click of the latch felt final, like sealing them into a space where truth couldn't be avoided any longer. Lauren turned to face him. She'd loosened her hair from its usual professional style, and it fell around her shoulders in waves that made her look younger, less armored. "I've been thinking about this all weekend," she said. "About what we said at the gala, about what happens next." "And?" Ethan's voice came out rougher than he intended. "And I keep coming back to the same conclusion." Lauren moved away from the window, pacing the length of the conference table. "This is impossible. The ethics alone, I'm your boss, Ethan. The power dynamic makes any relationship inherently problematic. Add in company policy, board expectations. The ammunition we'd be handing to people like Rachel." She stopped, gripping the back of a chair. "Every rational part of me says we end this now, before it becomes something we can't take back." Ethan felt something hollow out in his chest. "Okay." "But I can't," Lauren continued, her voice breaking slightly. "I've tried. For months I've tried to stop thinking about you, stop noticing you, stop wanting—" She pressed her palms flat on the table. "I built my entire life on control, calculated decisions, risk management, and you're the first thing in 10 years that I want despite knowing better." The confession hung in the air between them, raw and dangerous. Ethan crossed the room slowly, stopping on the opposite side of the conference table, maintaining that crucial distance even as everything in him wanted to eliminate it. "I have Mia to think about," he said. "She's been through enough, losing her mother, adapting to new circumstances. I can't bring instability into her life because I have feelings for someone I shouldn't." "I know. But I also can't keep pretending," Ethan continued. "That night you showed up at my apartment. You were right about loneliness. I know exactly what that feels like. And then you walked into my life and hired me and challenged me and saw something in my work that I'd stopped seeing myself. You made me feel like more than just Mia's dad, more than just a guy trying to survive." Lauren's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "What are we doing, Ethan?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But I think we're done pretending it's nothing." They stood on opposite sides of the table, the polished wood between them reflecting the overhead lights, and Ethan could see his own uncertainty mirrored in Lauren's expression. Neither of them moved. The moment stretched, fragile and electric. Finally, Lauren spoke. "If we do this, and I'm not saying we should, but if we do, we need rules. Boundaries. Ways to protect both of us and especially Mia." "What kind of rules?" Lauren pulled out a chair and sat, gesturing for Ethan to do the same. He did, and suddenly this felt like a negotiation, a business meeting about something decidedly not business. "First," Lauren said, "complete discretion at work. No one can know. Not Marcus, not anyone. What happens between us stays entirely separate from Catalyst." "Agreed." "Second, Mia comes first. Always. If this starts affecting her in any way, her routine, her security, her happiness, we stop immediately." Ethan nodded. That was non-negotiable for him too. "Third," Lauren continued, her voice quieter now, "we go slow. We figure out if this is real or if it's just proximity and loneliness and timing. Before we risk everything, we need to be sure." "How do we do that?" Ethan asked. "We can't exactly go on dates, can't be seen together outside work." "I don't know," Lauren admitted. "Maybe that's the test. If we can't figure out how to navigate this carefully, then we shouldn't be doing it at all." The logic was sound, but it left them in the same impossible position, acknowledging feelings they couldn't easily act on, agreeing to explore something they couldn't openly pursue. "This is insane," Ethan said, echoing Lauren's words from the gala. "Completely." Lauren reached across the table, her hand palm up in invitation. "But I'm tired of being safe and miserable." Ethan took her hand, and the simple contact sent electricity up his arm. Her fingers were warm this time, steady despite the tremor he could feel beneath her skin. They sat like that for a long moment, hands clasped across the conference table, two people trying to figure out how to want something without destroying everything else. "So what now?" Ethan asked. Lauren smiled, and it was real, reaching her eyes in a way her corporate smiles never did. "Now we figure it out as we go, carefully, together." It wasn't a solution. It wasn't even a plan. But it was permission to stop fighting what they both felt, and that felt like oxygen after months of suffocation. They stayed in that conference room for another hour, talking about everything except work. Lauren told him about growing up with parents who valued achievement over affection, about building Catalyst from nothing while watching colleagues start families and build lives she'd convinced herself she didn't want. Ethan talked about Sarah, about the good years before cancer and the terrible ones after, about learning to be both mother and father to a daughter who asked questions he didn't always know how to answer. "Does Mia remember her?" Lauren asked gently. "Not really. She was only 2 when Sarah died. Sometimes she'll say something that makes me think there's a shadow of memory there, but mostly Sarah's just a story I tell her, the beautiful woman who loved her so much." Ethan's voice caught. "I'm terrified I'm not enough, that growing up without a mother will leave holes I can't fill no matter how hard I try." "You're a wonderful father," Lauren said with absolute certainty. "I see how you prioritize her, how you light up when you talk about her. She's lucky to have you. I hope she thinks so when she's older and realizes how much we struggled. She'll know you did everything for her. That's what will matter." They talked until the building's night cleaning crew arrived, startling them both into awareness of how late it had gotten. They left separately, Ethan first and Lauren 10 minutes later, maintaining the discretion they'd agreed to even though the building was nearly empty. Driving home, Ethan felt lighter than he had in months. Nothing was solved. All the complications still existed, all the risks remained, but the weight of pretending was gone. They'd acknowledged the truth. Now they just had to figure out how to live with it. The next few weeks developed a careful rhythm. At work, nothing changed visibly. Lauren remained the demanding CEO, Ethan the talented designer. Their interactions stayed professional, their meetings necessary and brief. But underneath the surface, everything was different. They developed a system of small communications invisible to everyone else. Lauren would email him about a project and sign off with looking forward to seeing the results, which meant she was thinking about him. Ethan would respond with, "I'll make sure it exceeds expectations," which meant he was thinking about her too. Tiny acknowledgments buried in business correspondence that felt like secrets passed in a crowded room. They found stolen moments. A late evening when everyone else had left and they could talk in Lauren's office with the door closed, conversation ranging from campaign strategies to Mia's latest achievement to the books they were reading. A early morning when Ethan arrived before 6 and found Lauren already there, and they shared coffee in the break room while the city woke up outside the windows. Brief, carefully timed, never enough. "This is torture," Lauren said one evening 3 weeks after their conference room conversation. They were in her office reviewing a presentation, sitting on opposite sides of her desk like proper colleagues, while Ethan wanted nothing more than to cross that distance and kiss her. "Complete torture," Ethan agreed. "But it's also kind of wonderful." Lauren looked up from the document, confused. "How is this wonderful?" "Because I get to know you," Ethan said simply. "Not just Lauren Hale, CEO, you. The person who reads mystery novels on weekends and has strong opinions about Oxford commas and once wanted to be a journalist before business school. I mentioned that once in passing." "I remember everything you tell me," Ethan said, and watched color rise in Lauren's cheeks. "We're supposed to be reviewing the Hansen presentation," she said, but she was smiling. "Right, professional boundaries." Ethan focused back on the document, but his foot found hers under the desk. The briefest contact that Lauren didn't pull away from. These tiny rebellions sustained them, moments of connection that felt stolen and precious precisely because they were so carefully hidden. But secrets have a way of leaving traces, and Rachel Moore was very good at reading traces. She noticed that Lauren and Ethan were never in the same place outside of necessary meetings. She noticed that Ethan's work quality had somehow elevated even further, as if he was creating for an audience of one. She noticed the way Lauren's entire demeanor softened infinitesimally when Ethan entered a room, a relaxation so subtle that someone who hadn't been watching closely would miss it entirely. Rachel didn't miss anything. She began documenting with more precision. Timestamps of when they both stayed late, patterns in email correspondence, the fact that Lauren had suddenly become more flexible about Ethan's schedule, approving time off requests that she would have questioned from anyone else. "You're working late a lot lately," Rachel commented to Ethan one evening, appearing at his cubicle near 7 p.m. "Dedication like that gets noticed." "Just trying to stay on top of deadlines," Ethan said neutrally. "Of course." Rachel's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Though I have to say, Lauren seems particularly invested in your success. She mentions your work in executive meetings quite frequently." The comment was designed to sound like a compliment while planting seeds of doubt. Was Lauren's praise genuine or evidence of favoritism? Was Ethan's success earned or granted? Rachel excelled at these subtle manipulations, and Ethan could feel the trap even if he couldn't quite identify its shape. "I'm grateful to be working with such a talented team," he said carefully. "We're all grateful to be here," Rachel agreed. "Though some of us have been here considerably longer and understand the company culture better, how things work, what's expected." She straightened. Just friendly advice. Be careful about being too visible. Sometimes it's safer to excel quietly." After she left, Ethan sat staring at his screen, her words churning in his mind. Was he being too visible? Had their carefully maintained discretion developed cracks he wasn't seeing? He texted Lauren, "We need to be more careful." Her response came 5 minutes later. "Agreed, Rachel?" "Yes." "My office, 10 minutes." When Ethan arrived, Lauren was standing at her window, tension visible in every line of her body. "She's building something," Lauren said without preamble. "I can feel it. Rachel doesn't make moves without preparation, and she's been too quiet lately." "What can she actually do?" Ethan asked. "We haven't broken any rules. We haven't—" He stopped, aware even now of being careful with words. "We haven't been physically inappropriate at work," Lauren finished, "but intent matters. If she can prove there's a relationship, even an emotional one, it creates problems. Questions about my judgment, your credibility, whether business decisions are influenced by personal feelings." "Are they?" Ethan asked quietly. Lauren turned to face him. "If you'd submitted subpar work, I wouldn't approve it because I care about you. But do I give your work more attention? Do I think about how assignments might affect you personally? Do I find reasons to check in on projects you're leading?" She met his eyes. "Yes, and that's the problem." "So what do we do?" "We make a decision," Lauren said. "Either we stop this completely, truly stop, not just pretend, or we accept the risk and figure out how to manage it better." Ethan thought about the past 3 weeks, the stolen conversations and hidden smiles, and the way anticipation of seeing Lauren had transformed every workday from obligation to opportunity. He thought about going back to the hollow pretense of the months before, when every interaction had felt like denial. "I don't want to stop," he said. "Neither do I." Lauren crossed her arms. That gesture he'd learned meant she was protecting herself. "But Ethan, if this goes wrong, when it goes wrong, because these things always do eventually, you lose your job. I lose my reputation. Mia loses stability. I know the risks." "Do you?" Lauren's voice sharpened. "Because I don't think you understand what it's like to be targeted. Rachel's been with this company for 8 years. She has relationships with board members. She knows how to plant doubts, build cases, make problems seem bigger than they are. If she decides to make this an issue, then we deal with it," Ethan interrupted. "Together. Isn't that what we agreed?" "I agreed to go slowly, to be careful. Not to—" Lauren stopped herself, taking a visible breath. "I'm scared, Ethan. I've built this company through calculated risks and careful planning. This feels like jumping without a parachute." Ethan crossed the room, stopping just within arm's reach. "I'm scared too. Every time I think about how this could affect Mia, I want to run. But I'm also tired of being afraid of everything. Sarah died because cancer doesn't care about fair or careful or doing everything right. Sometimes terrible things happen no matter how much you protect yourself." "So we just embrace chaos?" Lauren asked, but there was no heat in the question, just exhaustion. "No. We stay careful, we maintain boundaries, but we stop apologizing for feeling something real in a world that doesn't guarantee anything. He wanted to touch her, to close the distance between them. But even now, even alone in her office with the door closed, that felt like too much risk. I'm not asking for reckless. I'm asking for possible. Lauren looked at him for a long moment, and Ethan saw the war playing out behind her eyes. Caution versus desire, control versus surrender. Finally, she nodded. Possible. We can try for possible. It wasn't a victory. It was barely even agreement, but it was enough to keep moving forward, which felt like all they could ask for. What neither of them saw was Rachel Moore in the hallway outside Lauren's office, pressed against the wall just beyond the line of sight from the glass walls. She hadn't heard their entire conversation. The office was reasonably soundproofed, but she'd seen Ethan enter. She'd checked the time, 7:43 p.m. She'd waited exactly 18 minutes before Ethan emerged, his expression complicated and raw. Rachel added it to her documentation. The pattern was becoming impossible to deny. Now she just needed the perfect moment to use it. That moment came 2 weeks later, during the most important client presentation of the quarter. Catalyst had been courting Meridian Industries for months, a Fortune 500 company looking to rebrand after a merger. The account would be worth millions and could elevate Catalyst's profile significantly. Lauren had assembled her best team. Rachel as lead strategist, Ethan heading creative, Marcus on digital integration, and 2 others supporting. The presentation was scheduled for a Thursday morning. They'd prepared for weeks, refining every element until the pitch was flawless. Lauren had run practice sessions, pushed them to anticipate every question, insisted on perfection because this was the kind of account that could transform a company. The night before the presentation, Ethan stayed late finishing final adjustments to the creative mock-ups. Mia was with her regular babysitter, and he'd promised to be home by 9, but deadline pressure kept him at his desk until nearly 8. He was so focused on his screen that he didn't hear Lauren approach until she spoke. "You should go home. Those are perfect." Ethan looked up to find her standing at his cubicle, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one, black with 1 sugar, exactly how he took it. "I want to make sure everything's perfect," Ethan said. "This is too important." "It's already perfect. You're just anxious." Lauren leaned against the cubicle wall, far enough away to maintain professional distance, but close enough that Ethan could smell her perfume. "I've seen you do this before. You get in your head about whether your work is good enough, and you keep tweaking until you're making it worse instead of better." "That's not—" Ethan stopped, because she was right. "Okay, maybe." "It's one of the things I admire about you," Lauren said quietly. "You care so much about the work, but you also need to trust yourself. You're brilliant, Ethan. Tomorrow's going to go perfectly." The compliment warmed something in Ethan's chest. "I hope so, for all our sakes." They stood there in the quiet office, the floor empty except for them, and Ethan felt the familiar pull of wanting to close the distance between them. Weeks of stolen moments and careful restraint had built to a pressure that felt unsustainable. "Lauren?" he started. "I know," she interrupted softly. "But not here, not tonight. Tomorrow's too important." She was right, as usual. Ethan nodded and forced himself to save his work and start shutting down. "Will you get home okay?" "I'm leaving now too," Lauren said. "Early night, clear head for tomorrow." They walked to the elevator together, rode down in silence, separated in the lobby with professional nods that gave nothing away. But in his car, Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. "You're going to be amazing tomorrow. I believe in you." He saved the message, smiling like a fool, and drove home to Mia. The presentation started at 10 a.m. sharp. Meridian's executive team filled Catalyst's largest conference room, the CEO, CFO, and Chief Marketing Officer, along with their assistants and advisors. Lauren made introductions with her usual polish, and then Rachel took over, walking through the strategic framework with confident precision. She was good, Ethan had to admit. Rachel understood business in ways that complemented creative thinking, and her presentation built a compelling case for why Catalyst was the right choice for Meridian's rebrand. Then it was Ethan's turn. He'd presented to clients dozens of times, but this felt different, more important. He could feel Lauren's eyes on him, could sense Rachel's critical assessment. The stakes were enormous. He started strong, walking through the creative concept with examples that demonstrated both innovation and market awareness. The Meridian team leaned in, engaged, asking questions that suggested genuine interest. Ethan felt his confidence building as he moved through the slides, hitting every point they'd rehearsed. Then Rachel's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, and looked up at Lauren with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. The presentation continued. Ethan finished his section, and Marcus took over digital strategy. The Meridian team was nodding, clearly impressed. Lauren was smiling in that measured way that meant things were going well. Then Rachel's phone buzzed again. This time she stood up, murmuring an apology, and stepped out of the conference room. Ethan felt unease crawl up his spine but pushed it aside. Marcus was doing great. The clients were engaged. Everything was fine. Rachel returned 5 minutes later and leaned down to whisper something in Lauren's ear. Lauren's expression went carefully blank, never a good sign. She nodded slightly, and Rachel sat back down, her face composed but her eyes bright with something that looked like satisfaction. The presentation concluded successfully. The Meridian team shook hands, promised to be in touch within a week, left with materials and smiles that suggested Catalyst was the frontrunner. It should have felt like victory. Instead, Lauren immediately said, "Rachel, Ethan, my office, now." Ethan's stomach dropped. Whatever Rachel had whispered, whatever those text messages had been, this was bad. They followed Lauren to her office. She closed the door, unusual for a meeting with multiple people, and turned to face them with an expression of controlled fury. "Rachel, would you like to explain what you just told me?" Lauren's voice was dangerously quiet. Rachel's expression was sympathetic, which made Ethan's alarm bells ring louder. "I'm sorry to bring this up, especially right after such an important presentation, but I received information this morning from a friend who works in HR that there's been a formal complaint filed." "What kind of complaint?" Lauren asked. "An ethics complaint, alleging inappropriate favoritism towards certain employees based on personal relationships rather than merit." Rachel's eyes flicked to Ethan. The complaint specifically mentions preferential treatment in project assignments, flexible scheduling policies, and promotion considerations. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. "Who filed it?" "The complaint is anonymous, as allowed by company policy," Rachel said. "But HR is required to investigate all ethics complaints, particularly those involving executive-level staff." Lauren's jaw was tight. "When did you receive this information?" "About 30 minutes ago. I debated whether to mention it during the presentation, but I thought you should know immediately." Rachel's tone was perfectly calibrated, concerned colleague delivering bad news reluctantly. "And you felt it appropriate to interrupt a major client presentation with this?" Lauren's voice could have cut glass. "I thought you'd want to know before it becomes public knowledge," Rachel said. "These things have a way of spreading quickly through an organization." Ethan watched the exchange, feeling like he was in free fall. An ethics complaint, investigation, the timing, right after weeks of Rachel watching them, documenting, building her case. "This is ridiculous," he said. "I've earned every assignment I've been given. My work speaks for itself." "I'm sure it does," Rachel said smoothly. "But perception matters. And if people perceive favoritism, whether it exists or not, it creates problems for everyone involved." "Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Rachel," Lauren said, her tone making it clear she didn't feel thankful at all. "I'll handle it from here. You can go." Rachel stood, and Ethan could swear he saw a smile flickering at the corner of her mouth. "Of course, I'm available if you need anything else." She left, closing the door behind her with a soft click that felt like a trap snapping shut. Lauren stood frozen for a moment, then moved to her desk, bracing her hands on it. "This is what I was afraid of." "She filed it," Ethan said, "or she got someone to file it for her." "Probably, but it doesn't matter who filed it. What matters is that it exists, and HR has to investigate, and now everything we've tried to keep private is going to be examined." Lauren looked up at him, and Ethan saw fear in her eyes for the first time since that rainy Thursday night. "This could destroy both of us." "We haven't done anything wrong," Ethan insisted. "We've been careful, professional." "Have we?" Lauren's voice was sharp with stress. "Can we honestly say there's been no favoritism? That my decisions regarding you have been purely professional? Ethan thought about the flexibility with his schedule, the high-profile projects, the way Lauren had pulled him from Rachel's supervision. My work has been good. That's not favoritism, that's recognition of talent. But can we prove it? Lauren pressed. Can we prove that every decision I made regarding you was based solely on merit and not influenced by personal feelings? The silence that followed was damning. They both knew the answer. What happens now? Ethan asked quietly. Now HR investigates. They'll interview people, review assignment records, look for patterns. They'll ask questions about our relationship. Lauren stopped herself. Our professional relationship, and depending on what they find, there could be consequences ranging from a formal warning to termination. For me or for you? Potentially both. Lauren sank into her chair, suddenly looking exhausted. But realistically, you'd bear the brunt. I'm the CEO and a founder. I have board protection. You're the employee who could be seen as benefiting from improper influence. The injustice of it hit Ethan like a physical blow. So I lose my job while you keep yours, even though we're both... He stopped, aware that saying it out loud made it more real. Both involved in something we shouldn't be, Lauren finished. Yes, that's exactly what would happen, which is why I warned you about power dynamics from the beginning. Anger flared in Ethan's chest. So what are you saying? That this is my fault for not being more careful, for being naive about how this works? No, Lauren said quickly. I'm saying this is impossible, exactly like I told you it was, and now we're facing the consequences of pretending it could be anything else. They stared at each other across her desk, and Ethan felt the fragile possibility they'd built crumbling around them. 3 weeks of careful hope, of stolen moments and hidden feelings, destroyed by a single complaint that was probably Rachel's calculated revenge. I should resign, Ethan said, before the investigation goes further. That way you're protected. Don't, Lauren said immediately. Resigning looks like admission of guilt. It makes everything worse. Then what do I do? Lauren closed her eyes briefly. You cooperate with the investigation. You answer questions honestly but carefully. You demonstrate that your work has been exceptional on its own merit. She opened her eyes. And we stop whatever this is between us. Immediately. Completely. The words hit like a punch. Lauren, there's no other choice, she said, and her voice was breaking. I can't protect you if we're together. I can't even protect myself. The only way through this is to prove that nothing inappropriate happened, which means nothing can be happening now. After everything we said... I know what we said, Lauren interrupted, and I meant it, but I also meant that Mia comes first. Your job, your stability, her security, all of that is more important than what I want. Ethan wanted to argue, to fight, to find some solution that didn't require them to give up before they'd barely begun. But looking at Lauren's expression, the fear and regret and determination, he knew she was right. They'd been caught before they'd even started, and now they were both paying the price for something that had existed mostly in intention rather than action. Okay, he said quietly. We stop. Okay, Lauren echoed, and the devastation in her voice matched his own. Ethan left her office feeling numb. The high of the successful presentation had evaporated, replaced by the crushing weight of investigation and accusation. He returned to his desk and stared at his computer screen without seeing it, his mind churning through worst-case scenarios. He could lose his job. He could lose his ability to support Mia. He could lose the career he'd barely started building. And for what? For feelings he'd never fully acted on. For a relationship that had existed in coffee conversations and late-night texts and careful distances maintained. His phone buzzed, a text from the daycare. Mia has a fever. Please come pick her up. Of course. Because when it rained, it poured. Ethan grabbed his jacket and headed for the elevator, passing Rachel's office on the way. Through the glass, he saw her on the phone, smiling about something. Their eyes met briefly, and her smile widened. She'd won, Ethan realized. Whether or not the investigation found anything, Rachel had achieved her goal. She'd driven a wedge between him and Lauren. She'd created doubt and fear and consequences. And the worst part was, Ethan couldn't even fully blame her. They'd given her the ammunition. They'd let themselves feel something they shouldn't, want something impossible, and now they were all paying the price. He picked up Mia from daycare, stomach virus, nothing serious, and took her home. She fell asleep on the couch while he made soup she wouldn't eat, and Ethan sat watching his daughter sleep, thinking about all the ways he'd failed to protect her. Not from illness. That was inevitable. But from instability, from poor decisions, from putting his own wants ahead of her needs. His phone buzzed again. A text from Lauren. How is she? Ethan stared at the message for a long time before typing back. She's okay. Just needs rest. Take tomorrow off. Be with her. Lauren, the investigation means nothing if you're not being a good father first. Take the day. That's an order from your boss, not anything else. Ethan sent back a simple, thank you. No response came, and Ethan didn't expect one. They were done with secret communications and hidden meanings, done with everything except the professional relationship that had gotten so dangerously complicated. He watched Mia sleep and tried to convince himself that doing the right thing should feel less like losing everything. Mia's fever broke by morning, but Ethan kept her home anyway, grateful for Lauren's insistence that he take the day. They built blanket forts in the living room and watched her favorite movies, and Ethan tried to be present for his daughter while his mind churned through everything that had happened. Mia, with the intuition that children sometimes possessed, seemed to sense his distraction. Daddy, are you sad? She asked during the second movie, her small hand reaching for his. No, sweetheart. Just thinking about work stuff. Is work stuff making you sad? Ethan pulled her close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. Sometimes grown-up things are complicated, but you don't need to worry about that. You just need to get better. I am better, Mia announced. My tummy doesn't hurt anymore. She did seem recovered, bouncing around the apartment with her usual energy by afternoon. Ethan made her favorite dinner, mac and cheese with cut-up hot dogs, and listened to her explain the intricate social dynamics of her preschool class. At 4 years old, Mia's world was already complex with friendships and conflicts and alliances that shifted daily. Ethan envied the simplicity of problems that could be solved with sharing toys and saying sorry. His phone buzzed intermittently throughout the day. Updates from Marcus about work, an email from HR requesting a meeting Monday morning, nothing from Lauren, which was both expected and painful. After Mia fell asleep that night, Ethan sat at his laptop and pulled up his resume again. He'd been updating it since the investigation started, preparing for the worst. His 6 months at Catalyst looked impressive on paper, but he'd need references, and asking Lauren seemed impossible now. Maybe Marcus would vouch for him. Maybe some of the clients he'd worked with directly. His phone rang, startling him, Lauren's name on the screen. Ethan stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Hello? Is Mia okay? Lauren's voice was tight with concern. She's fine. Sleeping. It was just a stomach bug. Good. That's good. A pause, heavy with everything they weren't saying. I shouldn't have called. I just needed to know she was all right. Lauren, don't, she interrupted softly. Please. This is already hard enough. Ethan closed his laptop, moving to the window. The Seattle rain had started again, drops streaking down the glass in the glow of streetlights. What happens Monday? HR will interview you. They'll ask about your work assignments, your qualifications, your relationship with me. Answer everything honestly. Don't try to protect me. It'll only make things worse. I'm not going to throw you under the bus. I'm not asking you to. But if they ask if I've shown you preferential treatment and you lie, it becomes perjury in a formal investigation. So be honest. Lauren's voice dropped. Be honest about the work, about your qualifications. Just be careful about anything else. There isn't anything else, Ethan said. Not really. I know. The words came out almost like a sigh. We were so careful, and it still wasn't enough. They fell into silence, connected by the phone, but separated by circumstance and investigation, and all the reasons this had been impossible from the start. I miss you, Lauren said suddenly. Is that insane? We barely had anything, and I already miss it. Ethan's chest tightened. It's not insane. I miss you too. We should hang up. We should. Neither of them did. They stayed on the line, breathing in the quiet, until finally Lauren spoke again. Monday's going to be difficult for both of us, but especially for you. Are you prepared? I don't know how to prepare for this. Tell the truth about your work. Make them understand that you earned every opportunity. And Ethan? Her voice strengthened. Don't let them make you feel like you're not good enough. You are. With or without me, you're exceptional at what you do. Thank you, Ethan managed. Good night, Lauren said, and ended the call before Ethan could respond. He stood at the window for a long time after, watching rain transform the city into something blurred and uncertain, wondering how something that had felt so right could go so wrong so quickly. Monday morning arrived with the inevitability of consequences. Ethan, dressed carefully in his best suit, kissed Mia goodbye and dropped her at daycare with promises to be there for pickup no matter what. The bus ride to the office felt like traveling to his own execution. The HR meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. Ethan arrived 15 minutes early and sat in the waiting area outside the HR department, watching employees pass with the paranoid certainty that everyone knew why he was there. Some probably did. Office gossip traveled fast, and an ethics investigation involving the CEO would be prime speculation fodder. At 9 sharp, a woman emerged from one of the offices. Sandra Chen, Catalyst's Director of Human Resources, someone Ethan had met briefly during his onboarding but never interacted with since. She was in her 50s, professionally dressed, with an expression that gave nothing away. Mr. Cole, please come in. The office was small, impersonal, with a generic corporate art on the walls and a conference table that seated 4. Sandra gestured to a chair, and Ethan sat, trying to project a confidence he absolutely didn't feel. Thank you for coming in, Sandra began, pulling out a folder. I want to assure you that this is a routine investigation prompted by an anonymous ethics complaint. We take all such complaints seriously, but this doesn't indicate any predetermined conclusion about wrongdoing. I understand, Ethan said, though the words felt hollow. I'm going to ask you some questions about your employment at Catalyst, your work assignments, and your relationship with senior leadership. Please answer as honestly and completely as possible. Sandra opened the folder. First, can you describe how you came to be hired at Catalyst Digital? Ethan walked her through it. The online portfolio, Lauren's call, the interview process. He emphasized his qualifications, the work samples he'd provided, the creative tests Lauren had assigned before making an offer. And did you have any personal relationship with Ms. Hale prior to your employment? No. I'd never met her or spoken to her before she called about the position. Sandra made notes. During your employment, how would you characterize your relationship with Ms. Hale? Ethan chose his words carefully. Professional. She's been an excellent mentor and a demanding boss. She pushes everyone on her team to do their best work. Would you say she's treated you differently than other employees? Here was the trap. Deny it, and he'd be lying. Admit it, and he'd be confirming the complaint. Ms. Hale has high standards for everyone. She's given me challenging assignments, which I appreciate. She's also been accommodating when I've needed flexibility for childcare, but that's consistent with company policy regarding parents. Have you received assignments or opportunities that you felt were beyond your experience level? I've received assignments that challenged me, Ethan said, but I've delivered results that justified the trust placed in me. Every campaign I've led has met or exceeded client expectations. Sandra continued questioning for 45 minutes, probing into specific projects, timeline decisions, promotion considerations. Ethan answered everything as truthfully as possible while trying not to incriminate either himself or Lauren. It felt like walking a tightrope blindfolded. Finally, Sandra closed her folder. Last question, Mr. Cole. Is there any personal relationship between you and Ms. Hale that could be perceived as influencing professional decisions? Ethan's heart hammered. This was it. The question everything hinged on. He thought about the rainy Thursday night, the conference room conversation, the stolen moments and careful distances. He thought about Lauren's instruction to be honest. Ms. Hale and I have developed mutual respect through working together, he said slowly. We've had conversations about work and occasionally about personal matters, as colleagues sometimes do. but there's no romantic relationship, if that's what you're asking. It was true, technically. They'd never kissed, never dated, never crossed the line into something that could be definitively labeled romantic. The fact that they'd wanted to, the fact that feelings existed, those were harder to quantify. Sandra studied his face for a moment. Thank you for your honesty. We'll be conducting similar interviews with other staff members and reviewing project records. You should hear about our findings within 2 weeks. And in the meantime, you continue your normal work. Try not to worry too much. These investigations are standard procedure, and most conclude with no action taken. Ethan left the office feeling wrung out and uncertain. He told the truth, mostly. He'd protected Lauren, he hoped, but he had no idea if it would be enough. Back at his desk, he found Marcus waiting. How'd it go? About as well as an ethics investigation can go, Ethan said, sinking into his chair. Marcus lowered his voice. For what it's worth, I think this is bullshit. Everyone knows you're talented. Anyone saying otherwise is just jealous. Thanks, man. Also, Lauren wants to see you, conference room C. Ethan's pulse quickened. Did she say why? Nope. Just asked me to pass the message. Ethan made his way to the 7th floor, wondering if this was wise. Being seen together right now, going to the same conference room where they'd had their first honest conversation, it felt risky. But he couldn't exactly ignore a summons from his boss. Lauren was already there, standing at the window in the same position she'd occupied weeks ago. She turned when he entered, and Ethan saw the strain in her expression, the shadows under her eyes that suggested she'd slept as poorly as he had. Close the door, she said. He did, and suddenly the room felt too small, the air too charged. How was your interview? Lauren asked. Thorough. Uncomfortable. Sandra's good at her job. She is. Lauren moved away from the window, but kept distance between them. I had mine this morning, too. 2 hours of questions about hiring practices and assignment decisions, and whether I've ever let personal feelings influence professional judgment. What did you tell them? The truth. That you're exceptionally talented. That every assignment you've received was based on merit. That I've maintained appropriate professional boundaries. Lauren's voice wavered slightly. I also told them that if the investigation concludes there's even the appearance of impropriety, I'll restructure to ensure there's no direct reporting relationship between us. Ethan felt something cold settle in his stomach. What does that mean? It means you'd be reassigned, different department, different supervisor. We'd interact only in large group settings, if at all. That's, Ethan struggled for words, that's extreme. That's protective, Lauren corrected, for both of us. If the investigation finds problems, having already implemented structural changes shows we're taking it seriously. And if it doesn't find problems? Lauren finally met his eyes. Then we've still learned we can't do this, whatever this is. We tried, Ethan. We tried to be careful and appropriate, and it still blew up in our faces. That's the universe telling us it's impossible. Or it's Rachel being vindictive, Ethan countered. Even if it is, she had material to work with. We gave her that material by letting ourselves feel things we shouldn't. Lauren's composure was cracking, emotion bleeding through. I don't regret getting to know you. I don't regret the conversations or the connection, but I do regret putting your career at risk for something that could never work anyway. You didn't do this alone. I made choices too. But I'm the one with power, Lauren said. I'm the one who should have been stronger, should have maintained better boundaries, and now you're being investigated because I couldn't... She stopped, pressing her fingers to her eyes. I'm supposed to be better than this. Ethan wanted to cross the room, to comfort her, to tell her she didn't have to be perfect. But even that impulse proved Lauren's point. They couldn't be what they wanted to each other, not without consequences. What happens now? He asked quietly. Now we wait for the investigation to conclude. We maintain absolute professionalism. And we accept that some things, no matter how much we want them, just aren't meant to be. The finality in her voice felt like a door closing, not just on a relationship that had barely started, but on possibility itself. Okay, Ethan said, because what else could he say? I'm sorry, Lauren whispered. For all of it. Me too. Ethan left the conference room feeling like he'd lost something he'd never actually had. The next 2 weeks crawled by in a fog of professional distance and careful avoidance. He saw Lauren in meetings, passed her in hallways, and they interacted with painful formality. The warmth that had developed between them was gone, replaced by the kind of studied neutrality that fooled no one paying attention. Rachel, of course, was paying attention. She watched with barely concealed satisfaction as the distance between Ethan and Lauren widened. The investigation continued in the background, a presence everyone felt but no one discussed openly. Then, 12 days after Ethan's interview, Mia got sick again. It started with a fever Wednesday morning, higher than the stomach bug, accompanied by a cough that sounded wrong. Ethan took her to the pediatrician, who diagnosed an ear infection and prescribed antibiotics. Nothing serious, the doctor assured him, common in kids her age. But by Thursday evening, Mia's fever had spiked to 104. The antibiotics weren't working. She was lethargic, barely responsive, and when Ethan called the pediatrician's after-hours line, the nurse told him to take her to the emergency room immediately. Panic flooded through him in a way he hadn't felt since Sarah's final hospitalization. He bundled Mia in a blanket, grabbed his insurance cards, and called a cab because his hands were shaking too badly to drive. The ER was crowded, overwhelming, and Mia was crying weakly against his shoulder. Ethan gave information to the triage nurse, his voice steady through sheer force of will, and they were moved to an examination room faster than he expected. Never a good sign. A doctor came quickly, examined Mia, ordered tests. Words like possible sepsis and secondary infection floated around Ethan's head without quite landing. They admitted her, transferred her to the pediatric ward, started IV antibiotics. Ethan sat by her hospital bed, holding her small hand, and felt the foundation of his world shifting. Mia was all he had, the center of everything. If something happened to her... He couldn't finish the thought. His phone buzzed around midnight, a text from Marcus. Heard Mia's in the hospital. Anything you need? Ethan stared at the message, trying to figure out how Marcus knew, then realized he must have called the office at some point to say he wouldn't be in. The details felt fuzzy. He texted back, "Thanks. We're okay. Waiting for antibiotics to work." Marcus responded immediately, "Let me know if you need anything. And I mean anything. Thanks." Another buzz. "Lauren." Marcus told me about Mia. Which hospital? Ethan hesitated. The investigation was ongoing. Lauren being here would look bad, would feed into exactly the narrative they'd been fighting against. But he was scared and alone, and Mia was so small in the hospital bed, and he typed back the hospital name before he could stop himself. Lauren arrived 30 minutes later. She appeared in the doorway of Mia's room, still in work clothes, slightly breathless like she'd run from the parking garage. Her eyes found Mia first, sleeping now, IV in her arm, monitors beeping softly, then moved to Ethan. "How is she?" Lauren asked quietly. "Ear infection got worse, spread. They caught it early enough that antibiotics should work, but..." Ethan's voice cracked. "She's so little, Lauren, and she's all I have." Lauren crossed the room without hesitation and pulled him into an embrace. Ethan stiffened for half a second. This was exactly what they shouldn't do, what the investigation made dangerous, then collapsed into it, letting himself take comfort from someone who understood. They stood like that for a long moment, Lauren's hand rubbing circles on his back, before she gently pulled away and took the chair beside him. "Tell me what the doctor said." Ethan walked her through it, the timeline, the symptoms, the treatment plan. Lauren listened with complete focus, asking clarifying questions that helped organize his scattered thoughts. "She's going to be okay," Lauren said when he finished. "Kids are resilient. The doctors caught it in time." "You don't know that," Ethan said, hearing the edge of panic in his own voice. "No," Lauren agreed, "but I believe it. And you need to believe it too, because Mia needs you strong right now, not falling apart." She was right. Ethan took a shaky breath, trying to pull himself together. "You shouldn't be here. If anyone finds out..." "I don't care," Lauren said simply. "Let them find out. Let them add it to their investigation. You needed someone, and I'm here. That's all that matters right now." "Lauren..." "Ethan, stop." She reached over and took his hand, the gesture deliberate and public despite the empty hallway outside. I've spent 10 years making careful decisions, protecting my reputation, building walls between myself and anything that could threaten what I've created. And you know what? I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of prioritizing optics over humanity. This isn't just about optics. It's about my job, your company. It's about a little girl in a hospital bed and her father who needs support, Lauren interrupted. Everything else is secondary. Ethan looked at their joined hands, then at Mia sleeping peacefully thanks to pain medication, then back at Lauren. The investigation can conclude whatever it wants, Lauren said. I'll deal with the consequences, but I'm not leaving you alone tonight. Something in Ethan's chest cracked open. For months, they'd been so careful, so controlled, maintaining distance for all the right reasons. And in one moment of crisis, Lauren had thrown all of that away to be here. Thank you, he whispered. Lauren squeezed his hand. Have you eaten? I don't remember. I'm getting you food. Watch Mia. I'll be back in 20 minutes. She left and returned with sandwiches from the hospital cafeteria and coffee that was terrible but caffeinated. They ate in silence, taking turns checking Mia's forehead for temperature changes, watching monitors for concerning fluctuations. Around 2 a.m., a nurse came to check vitals. She barely blinked at finding Lauren there, just smiled kindly and said Mia's numbers were improving. The antibiotics were working. Relief flooded through Ethan so intensely he felt lightheaded. She's going to be okay. Told you, Lauren said, but her own relief was visible. Mia woke around 4, groggy but more alert than she'd been in days. Her fever had broken. She looked around the unfamiliar room with wide eyes, found Ethan, then noticed Lauren. Who's that? Mia asked, her voice hoarse. Ethan glanced at Lauren, suddenly unsure how to explain. This is Lauren. She's a friend of Daddy's. Hi, Mia, Lauren said gently. How are you feeling? My ear hurts, Mia said, and I don't like this. She gestured at the IV. I know, sweetheart, but it's helping you get better. Lauren moved closer to the bed. You were very brave. I don't feel brave, Mia said, tears welling up. I want to go home. Soon, Ethan promised. The doctors need to make sure you're all better first. Mia started crying, the exhausted tears of a sick child who'd been through too much. Ethan moved to comfort her, but Lauren was faster, sitting on the edge of the bed and pulling Mia into a careful hug that avoided the IV line. It's okay to be scared, Lauren said softly. Hospitals are scary places. But your daddy's here, and he's going to make sure you're safe. And you know what? You're already getting better. By tomorrow, you'll probably feel good enough to be bored, and that's when you know you're really healing. Mia sniffled against Lauren's shoulder. Will you stay too? Lauren glanced at Ethan, who nodded. I'll stay as long as your dad wants me here. Then stay, Mia said simply, with the uncomplicated trust of children who hadn't yet learned to doubt people's intentions. Mia fell back asleep with surprising speed, and Lauren returned to her chair beside Ethan. They sat in the quiet hum of hospital machinery, watching Mia breathe easily now, crisis passing. She's wonderful, Lauren said quietly. You've done an amazing job with her. She's the best thing in my life, Ethan said. The only thing that matters. I know. Lauren was quiet for a moment. That's why I'm going to do something that's probably going to upset you. Ethan looked at her. What? Monday morning, I'm going to the board with a proposal to restructure Catalyst's leadership. I'm creating a chief creative officer position, senior leadership reporting directly to me, but with autonomous authority over all creative departments. And I'm recommending you for it. Ethan stared at her. Lauren, no. The investigation will show that you're exceptionally qualified and that I made a business decision based on talent, not favoritism, Lauren said firmly. You deserve this position, Ethan. You've earned it with your work. But more importantly, it removes the power dynamic. If you're C-suite, if you have autonomous authority, then there's no question of inappropriate influence. We're colleagues, not boss and employee. Ethan struggled to process. That's insane. You can't restructure your entire company because of you? Lauren finished. I'm not. I'm restructuring because Catalyst has grown to the point where we need specialized leadership. We've needed a CCO for over a year, but I've been too controlling to delegate. You give me the excuse to do what I should have done anyway." "And us?" Lauren met his eyes. "I don't know. Maybe nothing changes. Maybe the board rejects the proposal. Maybe you turn it down because you don't want the complication. But at least this way, we tried. We found a solution instead of just accepting impossible." Ethan thought about everything they'd been through. The careful distance, the investigation, the fear. He thought about Lauren showing up tonight despite the risk, about her sitting with him through Mia's crisis without hesitation. He thought about possibility versus safety, about wanting something versus being brave enough to reach for it. "I'll consider it," he said finally, "if the board approves it." "They will," Lauren said with quiet confidence, "because it's the right move for the company, regardless of anything else." They sat together until morning, watching Mia sleep, and when visiting hours officially began and Marcus arrived with a change of clothes for Ethan, Lauren slipped out quietly with a promise to call later. Mia was discharged that afternoon with instructions to finish the antibiotics and follow up with her pediatrician. Ethan took her home, tucked her into her own bed surrounded by her stuffed animals, and collapsed on his couch with exhaustion that was physical and emotional. His phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. "How is she?" "Home. Sleeping. Much better." "Good. Get some rest. And Ethan, think about the CCO position. Really think about it." He did think about it over the weekend while Mia recovered. He thought about the risk and the opportunity. He thought about Lauren restructuring her entire company to eliminate the barriers between them. He thought about what it would mean to be senior leadership, to have autonomy, to remove the power dynamic that had made everything so complicated. Monday morning, Sandra from HR called him into her office. "Mr. Cole, thank you for your patience during this investigation. I wanted to update you on our findings." Sandra opened a folder. "After interviewing multiple staff members and reviewing assignment records, we found no evidence of inappropriate favoritism or ethics violations. Your work consistently exceeded expectations and justified the assignments you received. Several colleagues specifically mentioned your talent and work ethic." Relief flooded through Ethan. "So I'm cleared?" "The complaint is being dismissed as unsubstantiated," Sandra confirmed. "However, Ms. Hale has proposed a structural reorganization that we believe is prudent regardless. She's briefing the board this afternoon about creating a chief creative officer position." "I heard," Ethan said carefully. "She's recommending you for the role. The board will make the final decision, but given your cleared status and work record, I expect they'll approve it." Sandra smiled. "Congratulations, Mr. Cole. This is quite an opportunity." Ethan left her office in a daze, cleared. The investigation was over, and he'd survived it. More than survived. He was being offered a position that would change everything. His phone rang. Lauren. "Did HR call you?" she asked without preamble. "Just left her office. I'm cleared." "I know, and the board meeting is in 2 hours. Ethan, I need to know, if they approve the CCO position, will you take it?" Ethan thought about Mia in the hospital bed, about Lauren showing up despite the risk, about months of pretending and distance and fear, all of it done in the name of protection that had nearly cost them everything anyway. "Yes," he said, "if they approve it, I'll take it." He could hear Lauren's sharp intake of breath. "Okay? Okay, good. I'll call you after the meeting." The next 3 hours were the longest of Ethan's life. He tried to work, to focus on campaigns and deadlines, but his mind kept drifting to what was happening in the boardroom. Was Lauren making her case? Were they buying it? Would they see through to the personal motivations underneath the business logic? At 4:30, his phone rang. "They approved it," Lauren said, and Ethan could hear the smile in her voice. "Unanimous vote. You're Catalyst Digital's first chief creative officer, pending your acceptance." "I accept," Ethan said immediately. "Good, because I have a lot of work to delegate to you." Lauren paused. "Ethan, this doesn't solve everything. There are still complications, still risks. People will still talk." "Let them talk," Ethan said, echoing her words from the hospital. "I'm tired of being afraid." "Me too," Lauren said softly. "Me too." They hung up, and Ethan sat at his desk trying to process everything that had shifted in the past week. Mia's illness forcing him to confront what mattered most. Lauren choosing humanity over optics. The investigation clearing them. The restructuring opening new possibilities. It wasn't a neat resolution. Questions remained about how they navigated this new dynamic. Whether the board's approval changed enough. What happened next with Rachel lurking in the background. But for the first time in months, Ethan felt like they had a chance. Not a guarantee, not certainty, but possibility. And possibility, he was learning, was sometimes the bravest thing you could choose. The announcement of Ethan's promotion to Chief Creative Officer went out Tuesday morning via company-wide email. Lauren had crafted it carefully, emphasizing the business rationale. Catalyst's growth necessitated specialized senior leadership, Ethan's proven track record with clients, the strategic vision he brought to creative work. Nothing personal, nothing that suggested motivations beyond corporate structure. The reactions were mixed. Marcus appeared at Ethan's desk within minutes, grinning. "CCO, man, that's incredible. Totally deserved." "Thanks," Ethan said, still processing the reality of it. "Though I have to say," Marcus added, lowering his voice, "the timing is interesting. Right after the investigation clears you, suddenly you're C-suite?" "Lauren's been planning this restructure for months," Ethan said, which was technically true even if the timeline had accelerated dramatically. "I just happened to be the right fit." Marcus studied him for a moment, then shrugged. "Well, either way, congratulations. First round's on you when we celebrate." Other reactions were less generous. Ethan could feel the speculation rippling through the office, see it in sidelong glances and hushed conversations that stopped when he passed. The ethics investigation had been semi-public knowledge, and now this promotion seemed to confirm every suspicion people had harbored. Rachel's response came in the form of a brief email. "Congratulations on your promotion. I look forward to working with you in your new capacity." Professional, appropriate, and somehow menacing in its neutrality. Ethan's new office was on the executive floor, 3 doors down from Lauren's, with actual walls instead of cubicle partitions and a view of Elliott Bay. Moving his belongings felt surreal. Less than 8 months ago, he'd been assembling furniture in a warehouse, and now he had an office with his name on the door and a title that made him one of the most senior people at a successful agency. Lauren stopped by late afternoon while he was unpacking boxes. She knocked on the open door, professional distance maintained despite the empty hallway. "Settling in?" "Trying to," Ethan said. "This still doesn't feel real." "It is real. You earned it." Lauren stepped inside but left the door open. "I wanted to brief you on something before it becomes general knowledge. I'm announcing my own restructure next week." Ethan looked up from the box he'd been unpacking. "What kind of restructure?" "I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations, promoting Rachel to Chief Operating Officer and delegating most management responsibilities to her and the other C-suite executives." Lauren's expression was carefully controlled. "I'll remain CEO and maintain board oversight, but I'm creating distance between myself and direct operational control." "Because of me," Ethan said quietly. "Because it's time," Lauren corrected. "I built Catalyst, but I've also been strangling it by trying to control everything. This company needs room to grow, and I need—" She stopped, choosing words carefully. "I need to build a life that's more than just this office." The implication hung between them. Lauren was removing herself from operational authority, creating even more distance from any power dynamic that could complicate whatever was developing between them. It was strategic and personal all at once, and Ethan felt the weight of what she was sacrificing. "Rachel's going to know why you're doing this," he said. "Let her know," Lauren said. "Let everyone know, frankly. I'm tired of hiding intentions. If people want to speculate about my motivations, they can speculate. But the business rationale is sound. Rachel's been ready for more responsibility for years, and I've been holding her back because I couldn't let go of control. She's not going to be gracious about this." "Probably not." Lauren smiled slightly. "But that's a problem for me to manage, not you. Your job is to build the best creative department in Seattle and prove that this promotion was about talent, not favoritism." "No pressure," Ethan said dryly. "You can handle it." Lauren glanced at her watch. "I should go. Board dinner tonight. But Ethan?" She met his eyes. "Take this weekend. Spend it with Mia. Process everything that's happened. And then Monday we start fresh." "What does fresh look like?" Lauren's smile widened slightly. "I guess we'll find out together." She left, and Ethan returned to unpacking with his mind churning through everything that was shifting. New role, new authority, new dynamics with Lauren that were undefined but possible in ways they hadn't been before. His phone buzzed with a text from Mia's daycare. Quick reminder, parent conference Friday at 4 p.m. Ethan had completely forgotten. He typed back confirmation, then pulled up his new calendar. One of the perks of his promotion was an assistant to help manage scheduling, and blocked off Friday afternoon. Being CCO might come with more responsibility, but he'd made a promise to himself in that hospital room. Mia came first, always. The rest of the week passed in a blur of meetings and transitions. Ethan assembled his leadership team, reviewed creative projects, started implementing ideas he'd been developing for months, but hadn't had authority to pursue. It was exhilarating and exhausting, and he fell into bed each night with his mind still racing through strategies and solutions. Friday's parent conference arrived before he felt ready for it. Ethan left the office at 3:30, ignoring the raised eyebrows from colleagues who were still adjusting to his new position, and arrived at Mia's daycare right on time. Her teacher, Miss Jennifer, greeted him with a warm smile. "Mr. Cole, thanks for coming. Please, sit." They settled into child-sized chairs in the brightly decorated classroom, and Jennifer pulled out a folder of Mia's work. "I wanted to talk to you about Mia's development. She's doing wonderfully in most areas. Her fine motor skills are excellent, her vocabulary is advanced for her age, and she's very social with the other children." But Ethan heard the concern she wasn't voicing. "But she's been asking a lot of questions about mothers lately," Jennifer said gently. "We've been doing a family unit and several children talked about their moms. Mia's been not upset exactly, but definitely processing something." Ethan felt his chest tighten. What kind of questions? Why she doesn't have a mommy when other kids do? Whether her mommy is coming back? If it's okay that she doesn't remember her very well? Jennifer's expression was sympathetic. These are completely normal questions for a child her age, especially one who lost a parent young. But I wanted you to be aware so you could address them at home. "I talked to her about Sarah," Ethan said. "Her mother. I show her pictures, tell her stories. And that's wonderful," Jennifer assured him. "But Mia's at an age where she's starting to understand what she's missing in a more concrete way. She sees her friends getting picked up by both parents, hears them talk about mommies, and she's beginning to feel that absence differently." Ethan thought about the hospital, about Mia asking Lauren to stay, about how his daughter had relaxed into Lauren's hug with an ease that suggested she was starved for that kind of maternal presence. What should I do? Keep doing what you're doing, being honest, keeping Sarah's memory alive, but also be prepared for more questions. And maybe, Jennifer hesitated, this is just a thought, but maybe consider whether there are women in your life who could provide some of that female presence she's craving. Aunts, family friends, anyone who could be a positive influence. Ethan nodded, his mind immediately going to Lauren even as he knew that was complicated. "I'll think about it. Thank you for telling me." He picked up Mia from her classroom afterward, and she chattered about her day while they walked to the car. But once she was buckled in, she grew quiet, and Ethan glanced in the rearview mirror to see her face troubled. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" "Miss Jennifer said we talked about families today," Mia said carefully. "And I told her I have you. But Emma said that's not a whole family because families have mommies and daddies." Ethan pulled over, unable to have this conversation while driving. He turned to look at his daughter directly. "Emma's wrong, Mia. Families come in all different shapes. Some have a mommy and daddy. Some have two mommies or two daddies. Some have just one parent, like us. What makes a family is love, not how many people there are." "But I want a mommy," Mia said, and the simple honesty of it broke Ethan's heart. "Is that bad?" "No, baby. That's not bad at all." Ethan unbuckled and climbed into the back seat, pulling Mia into his lap. "You had a mommy who loved you so much, your mama Sarah. She's not here anymore, but she would have been the best mommy if she could have stayed." "I don't remember her," Mia whispered. "I try, but I can't." "That's okay. You were very little when she died, but I remember her, and I can tell you all about her whenever you want." Ethan kissed the top of her head. "She had curly hair like yours. She loved to paint. She sang you lullabies and called you her little starfish." Mia was quiet for a moment. "The lady at the hospital was nice. Lauren, she hugged me like maybe a mommy would." Ethan's breath caught. Did you like that? Yeah. Mia looked up at him with wide, serious eyes. Is she your friend? She is, Ethan said carefully. She's a good friend. Could she be my friend too? The question was innocent, uncomplicated by adult concerns about appropriateness and timing. Mia just wanted connection, female presence, someone to fill the gap she was becoming aware of. Maybe, Ethan said. If that's something you want, we can see. I want, Mia said decisively. She has nice eyes. And she stayed even though it was nighttime. They drove home, and Ethan made dinner while Mia played with her dolls. But his mind was churning. His daughter needed more than he could provide alone. She needed women in her life, role models and connections. And while Lauren wasn't a permanent solution, nothing between them was certain enough for that, maybe she could be something, a presence, a possibility. That evening, after Mia was asleep, Ethan called Lauren. Hi, she answered, and he could hear the smile in her voice. How was the parent conference? Complicated, Ethan said, then walked her through the conversation about Mia's questions. She asked about you, whether you could be her friend too. Lauren was quiet for a moment. What did you tell her? That maybe, that we'd see. Ethan leaned back on his couch, exhausted. I don't know what I'm doing, Lauren. I don't know how to be enough for her when what she needs is something I can't give her. You're enough, Lauren said firmly. You're an incredible father, but I understand what you mean. Mia needs women in her life. Have you thought about reaching out to Sarah's family or your sister? Sarah's parents moved to Florida after she died. They send birthday cards, but otherwise aren't involved. And my sister lives in Boston with 3 kids of her own. We're not close. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. I've been so focused on just surviving, on making sure Mia has stability, that I didn't think about what else she might need. You're thinking about it now, Lauren said. That's what matters. She liked you, Ethan said quietly. At the hospital. She felt safe with you. I liked her too. She's wonderful, Ethan. Smart and brave and so much like you. Ethan took a breath, about to say something that felt enormous. Would you want to spend time with her, with us? Not as, I don't know what we are or what this is, but just as someone in our lives. The pause that followed felt infinite. Then Lauren said, I would like that very much. But Ethan, we need to be careful. For her sake. If she gets attached and this doesn't work out. I know, Ethan interrupted. Believe me, I know. That's what terrifies me. What? But she's asking for something, and you're someone who showed up when we needed help. That means something. Okay, Lauren said softly. So what do we do? I don't know. Dinner? Something casual where there's no pressure? I can do casual, Lauren said, and Ethan could hear the slight uncertainty in her voice that suggested casual might not be her strong suit. When? Tomorrow? It's Saturday. We could meet somewhere neutral. A park, maybe, or come to my house, Lauren said suddenly. I have a backyard. Mia could play, and we could talk. No restaurant audiences, no public scrutiny. It felt significant being invited into Lauren's private space. In all these months, Ethan had never seen where she lived. Are you sure? I'm sure. I'll text you the address. Come around too? They hung up, and Ethan sat in the quiet of his apartment trying to process what he'd just agreed to. Taking Mia to meet Lauren outside of crisis, deliberately building connection between them, it felt like stepping off a cliff into unknown territory. But Mia needed this. And if Ethan was being honest with himself, so did he. The next morning, he told Mia they were visiting his friend Lauren. She got excited immediately, insisting on wearing her favorite dress, purple with butterflies, and bringing along her elephant stuffed animal to show Lauren. Lauren's house was in Queen Anne, a neighborhood of elegant older homes with views of the Sound. Her place was a restored craftsman with a garden that suggested someone either loved plants or paid someone who did. Ethan pulled up to the curb, his stomach tight with nerves. This is pretty, Mia announced, unbuckling herself. Does Lauren like flowers? I think she might, Ethan said, though he realized he didn't actually know. Lauren answered the door in jeans and a soft sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked different than she did at the office, younger, less armored, almost uncertain as she smiled at them. Hi, she said. "Come in." The house was beautiful inside, hardwood floors and built-in bookshelves, art that looked original rather than mass-produced, furniture that managed to be both elegant and comfortable. But what struck Ethan most was how lived in it felt, contrary to the sterile loneliness he'd imagined. Books were stacked on the coffee table, a blanket was draped over the couch, and the kitchen visible beyond showed signs of actual cooking. "You have a nice house," Ethan said. "Thank you. I bought it 5 years ago and keep meaning to actually decorate, but..." Lauren shrugged. "I'm usually at the office." Mia was exploring with the fearless curiosity of 4-year-olds, taking in everything. She stopped at the bookshelves, pointing. "You have a lot of books. Daddy reads to me every night." "Does he?" Lauren crouched down to Mia's level. "What kind of books do you like?" "Stories about animals and princesses, but not the scary ones." "I have some books that might not be scary. Would you like to see?" Mia nodded enthusiastically, and Lauren led her to a section of shelves that Ethan realized contained children's books. Not many, but several classics that looked well kept. "I buy them sometimes," Lauren explained, catching his surprised expression. "For donation drives, usually, but I never actually donated these ones." She pulled out Where the Wild Things Are and sat on the couch with Mia, who climbed up beside her without hesitation. Ethan watched them read together, his daughter pointing at pictures and asking questions, Lauren answering with patient attention. Something in his chest cracked open watching them. This was what Mia needed: female attention, warmth, someone who saw her as more than just a responsibility. And Lauren, who'd claimed to have no space in her life for family, looked completely natural sitting with a 4-year-old reading about wild things and kings of the forest. After the book, Lauren suggested they go to the backyard. It was a beautiful space, well-maintained lawn, flower beds just starting to bloom with spring color, and a bench under a cherry tree. Mia immediately started exploring, chasing butterflies and examining flowers with detailed interest. Ethan and Lauren sat on the bench, close enough to talk quietly while keeping Mia in sight. "She's amazing," Lauren said, watching Mia crouch to look at a ladybug. "You've done such a good job with her." "I'm terrified constantly that I'm screwing it up," Ethan admitted. "Every decision feels weighted. Every choice could be the wrong one." "That's what makes you a good parent," Lauren said, "caring enough to worry." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Mia play. Finally, Lauren said, "I need to tell you something about why I invited you here today." Ethan looked at her, and Lauren's expression was serious, vulnerable. "I told you I built my life around control and careful decisions," she said. "What I didn't tell you is why. When I was 28, I was engaged. His name was Michael. He was smart and ambitious, and we were planning this perfect corporate power couple life together." Ethan said nothing, just listened. "Then I started Catalyst," Lauren continued. "It took over my life. 18-hour days, every spare thought dedicated to making it work. Michael got frustrated, said I was choosing work over him, over our future family. He wanted me to step back, to prioritize our relationship." She smiled bitterly. "I told him I couldn't, that this company was my dream, and if he loved me, he'd understand." What happened? He left, ended the engagement, moved to New York, married someone else within a year. Last I heard, they have 3 kids. Lauren's voice was steady, but Ethan could hear the old pain underneath. "I told myself I'd made the right choice, that work was more reliable than people, that success was better than vulnerability, and I built an entire life around that belief. Until," Ethan prompted gently. "Until you showed up drunk and broken at my door," Lauren said, and Ethan realized she was talking about herself, not him. "I went to your apartment that night because I was so desperately lonely that alcohol was the only thing that could push me past my defenses enough to admit it. You stopped something from happening that would have been a mistake, but you also..." She turned to look at him directly. "You also showed me what I'd been missing. Kindness without agenda. Connection without calculation. The possibility that maybe work wasn't enough after all." Mia's laughter rang out from across the yard, and they both glanced over to see her spinning with arms outstretched, chasing her own shadow. "I don't know how to do this," Lauren admitted. "Be in someone's life. Be part of a family. I've spent 10 years avoiding exactly this kind of complication." "I don't know how to do it either," Ethan said. I've spent 3 years focused entirely on Mia, telling myself that was enough, that I didn't need or want anything else. And now? Now I'm terrified, Ethan said honestly. Terrified of messing this up, of hurting Mia if it doesn't work, of losing my job again, my stability, everything I've built. But I'm also... He reached over and took Lauren's hand. I'm also tired of being alone, of pretending I don't want this. Lauren's fingers tightened around his. So what do we do? I think we try, Ethan said, carefully, with Mia's needs first and no promises we can't keep. But we try. That's terrifying, Lauren whispered. Oh, yeah, Ethan agreed, sad. But so is another 10 years of being lonely. They sat holding hands under the cherry tree, watching Mia play, and Ethan felt something settle in his chest. Not certainty, they were too smart for that, but possibility. The chance to build something real and complicated and worth the risk. Mia ran over eventually, breathless and happy. Can we come back here? I like it. Lauren smiled down at her. I'd like that very much. Can we have snacks? I'm hungry. I think I can manage snacks, Lauren said, standing and offering her hand to Mia, who took it without hesitation. They went inside, and Lauren produced crackers and cheese and apple slices that Mia devoured while chattering about the ladybug and the butterflies, and could they plant flowers at their apartment too? Ethan watched Lauren listen with genuine interest, asking follow-up questions, and felt his heart doing dangerous things in his chest. This could work, he thought. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be complications and gossip and judgment from people who didn't understand. But this... The three of them in Lauren's kitchen, Mia swinging her legs from a chair that was too tall for her, Lauren cutting apple slices with careful precision, this felt like something worth fighting for. They stayed until early evening, until Mia started getting tired and cranky. Lauren walked them to the door, and Mia surprised them both by hugging Lauren goodbye. Thank you for the snacks and the books, Mia said seriously. You're a good friend. Thank you, Mia, Lauren said, her voice slightly thick. You're a good friend too. In the car, Mia fell asleep almost immediately. Ethan drove home through the Seattle evening, his mind processing everything that had happened. They'd crossed a threshold today, moved from possibility into something more concrete. His phone buzzed at a red light, a text from Lauren. Thank you for today, for trusting me with her, with both of you. Ethan typed back one-handed. Thank you for showing up. Not just today, for all of it. What happens Monday? It was a good question. Monday meant returning to Catalyst, to their professional roles, to the scrutiny that would intensify now that people knew about the restructure. Rachel would be watching, the board would be assessing, everyone would be forming opinions about whether this promotion was legitimate or something else. Ethan typed, Monday we prove this was about talent, and after work, if you want, we figure out the rest together. I want. Me too. The following weeks developed a rhythm that was both familiar and entirely new. At work, Ethan and Lauren maintained careful professionalism. They interacted in meetings, collaborated on strategy, but always with appropriate distance and multiple witnesses. Rachel, newly promoted to COO, watched them with sharp eyes but said nothing overt, focusing instead on her expanded responsibilities with the intensity of someone determined to prove herself indispensable. Outside of work, slowly and carefully, they built something else. Dinner at Lauren's house on Tuesday evenings, usually with Mia drawing at the table while Ethan and Lauren cooked together. Occasional Saturday afternoons at parks or museums, Mia holding both their hands and chattering about everything and nothing. Late-night phone calls after Mia was asleep, conversations ranging from work strategy to childhood memories to the books they were reading. It wasn't dating, exactly. They were too conscious of Mia's presence, too careful about building foundation before romance. But it was connection, deliberate and deepening, and it felt like the most important thing Ethan had done since becoming a father. 6 weeks after that first Saturday at Lauren's house, Mia asked the question Ethan had been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. They were at dinner, Ethan's apartment this time, spaghetti night, and Mia was watching Lauren help clear dishes with an expression of serious consideration. Is Lauren your girlfriend? She asked suddenly. Ethan nearly dropped the plate he was holding. Lauren froze mid-reach for a glass. Why do you ask, sweetheart? Ethan managed. Because Emma's daddy has a girlfriend now, and Emma says she comes to dinner and helps with homework and stuff. Lauren does that with us. Mia tilted her head. So is she? Ethan looked at Lauren, who looked back at him, and they had an entire conversation in that glance. Honesty versus protection. Truth versus timing. What Mia could understand versus what she needed to hear. Lauren is very important to me, Ethan said carefully. And to you too, I think. Is that okay? Yeah, Mia said easily. I like when she's here. It feels... She struggled for the word. Fuller, like our family is bigger. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Is that what you want? For our family to be bigger? Mia nodded. Emma says families can be different shapes. Hers has her daddy and his girlfriend now. Ours could have you and me and Lauren, maybe. Lauren crouched down to Mia's level. Mia, I really like spending time with you and your daddy. You're both very special to me. But I want to make sure you understand. I'm not trying to replace your mama. Sarah will always be your mama, even though she's not here anymore. I know, Mia said. Daddy tells me about her. But you're here, and she's not, and... She reached out and touched Lauren's face with the unselfconscious affection of children. You're different than a mama, maybe, but you're something good. Lauren's eyes filled with tears, and Ethan saw her carefully controlled composure crack in the best possible way. You're something very good too, she whispered. That night, after Mia was asleep and Lauren was preparing to leave, they stood at Ethan's door having the conversation that had been inevitable since the moment Lauren had shown up at the hospital. I'm falling in love with her, Lauren said quietly, with both of you. And that terrifies me. Me too, Ethan admitted. But I think I've already fallen. Lauren looked up at him, and in her eyes, Ethan saw the same fear and hope he felt. This is real now, not just possibility. Real. Yeah. So what do we do? Ethan thought about all the careful steps they'd taken, the months of distance and denial and fear. He thought about Mia asking if Lauren was his girlfriend with the simple acceptance of children who hadn't yet learned to doubt good things. He thought about Rachel waiting for them to fail and the board watching for missteps and all the reasons this was still complicated. Then he stopped thinking and kissed her. It was their first kiss, months after everything had started, after crisis and investigation and restructuring. Lauren made a small sound of surprise, then melted into it, her hands coming up to cup his face. It wasn't passionate or dramatic. It was soft and certain and felt like coming home. When they pulled apart, Lauren was crying. I don't know how to do this. Be someone's... whatever this is. Partner? Ethan offered. Girlfriend? We can figure out terminology later. I don't know how to be in Mia's life without failing her. You won't fail her. You already make her happy. Ethan wiped tears from Lauren's cheeks with his thumb. But we go at Mia's pace. Her comfort and security come first, always. Always, Lauren agreed. And Ethan? I'm going to make mistakes. I've spent 42 years building walls, and learning to take them down won't be easy. I'll make mistakes too, Ethan said. I'm figuring out single parenthood and career, and now this, whatever we're calling it. We'll mess up together. Lauren laughed, the sound watery but genuine. That's not a very romantic promise. No, Ethan agreed, but it's an honest one. She kissed him again, briefer this time, then stepped back. I should go, but tomorrow can we tell people? Officially? I'm tired of hiding. Are you sure? The gossip, the judgment. Let them judge, Lauren said with sudden fierceness. I've spent too long caring what people think. I'm choosing this. Us. Whatever consequences come. Ethan felt something fierce and protective surge in his chest. Okay, we tell people. They did tell people, starting with HR to ensure everything was documented properly, then moving outward through their social circles. The reactions were predictable. Some genuinely happy, some skeptical, some clearly convinced this confirmed their worst suspicions about favoritism and inappropriate relationships. Rachel's response came in the form of a meeting request. Ethan found himself in her office 2 days after the announcement, unsure what to expect. I wanted to clear the air, Rachel said without preamble. She looked tired, Ethan noticed, less sharp than usual. I filed that ethics complaint, not anonymously. I had someone do it for me, but it was my instigation. Ethan had suspected, but hearing it confirmed still stung. Why? Because I was angry, Rachel said bluntly. I've been at Catalyst for 8 years. I've worked 80-hour weeks, sacrificed relationships, dedicated everything to this company. And you show up with your tragic backstory and raw talent, and suddenly you're Lauren's favorite. It felt... She stopped. It felt like all my work meant nothing compared to being the right narrative. My backstory isn't a strategy, Ethan said quietly. Sarah died. I was struggling. Those are facts, not manipulation. I know, Rachel leaned back in her chair. And that's what I've realized over these past months. You weren't playing games, you were just good at your job and genuinely connected with Lauren as a person. That's not favoritism, that's just how relationships work sometimes. So why tell me this? Because I'm trying to be better, Rachel said. Lauren giving me COO was unexpected, generous even, considering I was actively working against her relationship with you. And it made me realize that maybe I've been measuring success wrong. Maybe climbing isn't just about being the most ruthless person in the room. Ethan studied her, looking for manipulation but finding only exhaustion and something that looked like genuine remorse. What happens now? Now I do my job, you do yours. We're colleagues, not enemies. Rachel smiled slightly. Though I'm still going to push back if I think your creative strategies are bad for business. I'd expect nothing less, Ethan said. They shook hands, and Ethan left feeling like something had shifted. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe understanding. Rachel had acted out of fear and anger, emotions Ethan understood intimately. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but it made her human rather than villain. The months that followed were the happiest Ethan had known since before Sarah's diagnosis. Work was challenging and fulfilling. He built a creative department that produced award-winning campaigns, and the restructuring that had seemed so radical proved exactly what Catalyst needed to scale. Lauren stepped back from daily operations and discovered she was better as a strategic visionary than a micromanager, and the company thrived under the distributed leadership model. But more than work, Ethan's personal life filled out in ways he hadn't known he was missing. Lauren became a constant presence, not moving in, they were too cautious for that, but there most evenings and many weekends. She learned Mia's bedtime routine and preferred breakfast foods. She attended preschool performances and helped with art projects. She and Mia developed their own relationship, distinct from Ethan's role, built on books and garden time and quiet conversations that sometimes made Mia laugh in ways she never did with him. Watching them together cracked something open in Ethan's chest every single time. This was what Mia had been missing. Not a mother exactly, but a maternal presence. Someone who saw her fully and loved her fiercely. Lauren would never replace Sarah, but she didn't need to. She was building her own place in Mia's life, and Mia was thriving because of it. 8 months after that first Saturday visit, Ethan made a decision. He started looking at new jobs. Not because he was unhappy at Catalyst, but because he'd realized something important. As long as he worked there, there would always be whispers about his relationship with Lauren. Always questions about whether his success was earned or granted. Always the shadow of that ethics investigation, dismissed but not forgotten. He wanted to build something entirely his own, prove himself in a space where Lauren's influence couldn't be questioned, and he wanted to remove the professional complications that still occasionally made their personal relationship harder than it needed to be. He told Lauren one evening after Mia was asleep. They were on his couch, her head on his shoulder, comfortable in ways that still sometimes surprised him. "I'm thinking about leaving Catalyst," he said. Lauren sat up, startled. "What? Why?" He explained his reasoning, watching her expression shift from surprise to understanding to something that looked like grief. "I don't want you to leave because of us," she said. "You've built something amazing there. The creative department is thriving. And it'll keep thriving with someone else leading it," Ethan said. "But I need this, Lauren. I need to prove, to myself more than anyone, that I can succeed on my own merits. That everything I've built isn't because you saw something in me that night you hired me." "You know that's not true," Lauren said fiercely. "You're brilliant. Your work speaks for itself." "I know that here," Ethan touched his head, then his chest. "But I need to know it here.
And I need Mia to grow up seeing that her father succeeded because he worked hard, not because he was dating his boss. Lauren was quiet for a long moment. Where would you go? I've gotten offers. Nothing I've pursued seriously, but there's an agency in Portland that's been courting me. Smaller than Catalyst, but growing. They need a creative director, and the role would be completely mine to shape. Portland, Lauren repeated. That's 2 hours away. By car. Less by train. Ethan took her hand. I'm not asking you to choose between Catalyst and me. I need this. For me. Lauren nodded slowly, and Ethan saw her processing, that brilliant strategic mind working through implications. When would you start? They'd want me in 3 months. I'd give Catalyst 6 weeks' notice, help transition my replacement. Okay, Lauren said. Okay, if this is what you need, then we figure it out. You're sure? She kissed him, soft and certain. I'm sure. I spent 10 years choosing work over people. I'm not making that mistake again. Ethan gave his notice the following week. The reaction was mixed. Disappointment from his team, understanding from some colleagues, and from Rachel, a simple, good luck. You've earned this. His last day at Catalyst was bittersweet. He'd been there just over a year, but it had transformed his life in ways that had nothing to do with job titles. Marcus threw him a small party, and Lauren made a brief speech about his contributions that was professional enough for public consumption, but made eye contact with Ethan in ways that communicated everything else. After everyone left, Ethan packed the last items from his office. Lauren appeared in the doorway. All set? Yeah. Ethan looked around the space that had been his for less than a year. Weird to be leaving. You're going to be amazing in Portland, Lauren said. They're lucky to have you. Visit me? Ethan asked. The commute isn't terrible. Every weekend I can, Lauren promised. And Mia needs to see where her dad works. Show her what success looks like when you build it yourself. They drove to Ethan's apartment together, picked up Mia from the neighbor who'd been watching her, and had dinner like they did most nights now, comfortable and domestic and nothing like the careful distance they'd maintained for so long. Later, after Mia was asleep, Lauren said something that made Ethan's heart stop. I'm thinking about selling my house. Ethan looked at her, surprised. Why? Because it's too big for one person. Because I'm never there. Because... Lauren took a breath. Because I want to find something with room for all of us. If that's something you'd want. Eventually. Not right away, but... Yes, Ethan interrupted. Yes, eventually, absolutely, yes. Lauren laughed, relief evident. You didn't let me finish. Didn't need to. You're talking about building a life together. A real one, with shared space and commitment, and... Ethan pulled her close. I want that. Mia wants that. We want you. I want you too, Lauren whispered. Both of you. So much it scares me. Good scared or bad scared? Good scared, she decided. The kind that means it matters. The Portland job started 3 weeks later. Ethan moved into a small apartment near the office, close enough that his commute was easy, but with space for Mia to visit on weekends. Lauren came down most Fridays, staying through Sunday, and they developed a new rhythm, separated by distance during the week, but together when it counted. Mia adjusted better than Ethan expected. She liked having 2 places, liked the novelty of visiting Daddy's new city, liked that Lauren was around more on weekends because she wasn't working constantly. 6 months into the Portland job, Ethan's work started getting serious attention. His agency won major accounts, industry publications featured his campaigns, and suddenly he was being invited to speak at conferences and sit on panels. Success that was undeniably his own, unconnected to Lauren's influence. It felt amazing. 1 year after leaving Catalyst, almost exactly 2 years since Lauren had shown up at his door in the rain, Ethan made another decision. He proposed, not with a grand gesture or public display, but quietly, on a Saturday morning in the park where they'd taken Mia to play. Lauren was sitting on a bench reading while Mia played on the swings, and Ethan sat beside her, pulled out a simple ring, and said, I want to build everything with you. Will you marry me? Lauren looked at the ring, at him, at Mia laughing in the background. Tears filled her eyes. Yes, absolutely yes. They told Mia that afternoon.
She processed it with the practical consideration of 5-year-olds. So Lauren will be my what? Not Mama, because I have Mama Sarah in heaven, but something? Whatever you want to call her, Ethan said. She'll be part of our family officially. Mia thought about it. Can I call her Mama Lauren? Because she does mama things, but she's not replacing my first mama? Lauren started crying, and Ethan wasn't far behind. That sounds perfect, sweetheart. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the Seattle Art Museum. Marcus stood as Ethan's best man. Rachel surprisingly came as Lauren's guest, their relationship having evolved into genuine friendship through the year of working closely as COO. Mia was flower girl, taking her role very seriously, and when the officiant asked if anyone objected, she loudly announced, "I think it's good," making everyone laugh. At the reception, Ethan found a quiet moment with Lauren on the balcony overlooking the sound. "We did it," he said, "against all odds and ethics investigations and power dynamics and every reason it was impossible." "We did," Lauren agreed, leaning into him, "because we stopped accepting impossible as final." "Best decision I ever made," Ethan said. "Well, second best. First best was opening my door that rainy night." Lauren laughed. "That was your worst decision. I was a mess." "You were honest," Ethan corrected. "Maybe for the first time. And that honesty, that vulnerability, that's what started everything." They stood watching the sun set over the water, married now, building a family from pieces that hadn't seemed to fit, but somehow created something beautiful and whole. Inside, Mia was dancing with Marcus, her flower girl dress twirling. Tomorrow, they'd fly to Hawaii for a honeymoon. Ethan's first vacation in years, Lauren's first time prioritizing personal life over work. After that, they'd move into the house Lauren had bought, big enough for all of them, with a yard for Mia and an office for Ethan to work from when he was in Seattle, and room to grow into whatever their family became. It wasn't the life Ethan had planned. Sarah was supposed to be here, and he'd never expected to love someone else. But life didn't follow plans, and sometimes the unexpected gifts were the ones worth holding on to. "I love you," Ethan said. "I love you too," Lauren replied. "Both of you. My family." Mia appeared on the balcony, grabbing their hands. "Come dance! It's our song!" They went inside together, husband, wife, and daughter, and danced to music that celebrated new beginnings. And later, sitting at the playground 3 months after the wedding, watching Mia navigate monkey bars with determined concentration, Ethan thought about how far they'd come. From a rainy Thursday night and whispered confessions to ethics investigations and careful distance. From possibility to reality, from fear to courage, from broken pieces to something whole and chosen and real. "What are you thinking about?" Lauren asked, settled beside him on the bench, her hand in his. "That some risks are worth taking," Ethan said, "even when everyone says they're impossible, especially then." "Especially then," Lauren agreed and kissed him while Mia called out, "Look at me, I'm doing it," from the monkey bars. They watched their daughter, both of theirs now in the ways that mattered, navigate challenges with fearless determination, and Ethan knew this was what success actually looked like. Not job titles or awards or professional recognition, though those were good too. But this, a family carefully built, a love deliberately chosen, a life created from intention and courage, and the belief that impossible just meant you had to try harder. "She's amazing," Lauren said softly. "She is," Ethan agreed. "We did good." "We did," Lauren said, squeezing his hand. "We really did." And sitting there in the autumn sunshine, their daughter laughing, their future uncertain but chosen, Ethan felt the kind of peace that came from knowing he'd taken the hardest risk and found it was worth everything. Some love stories started with certainty, others with grand gestures or perfect timing. Theirs had started with mistakes and loneliness and a rainy Thursday night. But it had become something real and lasting, built not despite the obstacles, but because they'd faced them together, choosing courage over safety, connection over control, love over fear. That was worth celebrating, worth protecting, worth every impossible moment that had led them here, worth everything.